I realized a few minutes ago that we are 2 touchdowns away, including the extra points, away from college football. 14 weeks. 14 weeks from right now, Saturday to Saturday, August 27th, week 0, college football. For you snobs out there, we're not 14 weeks, we're 15 weeks. For you snobs out there that only pay attention to the big games, that Nebraska, Northwestern, and Vandy and Hawaii, let alone all those FCS games and Group of 5 games, not good enough for you. Okay, then it's going to be the next Saturday. Actually, let's take it back to Thursday night and the beginning of college football. So August 27th, I will get to watch some teams that I will certainly not watch the rest of the season. Hawaii and Vandy. I believe I'm gonna do my very best to watch that game. It's going to be also interesting to see Nebraska Northwestern playing in Dublin, what time they will play, because typically these NFL games probably are played sometime in the afternoon, local time in Europe, and they turn out to be 8 a.m., 9 a.m. games here in the States on the East Coast. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. And on that note, a happy note, a good note, because that's why we're all here 12 months a year, 24/7. It's an interesting name for a network, 24/7, 24/7. Sounds like that could be a decent name. Maybe I'll switch to 24/7. Good name for a sports network, college football, 24/7. Anyway, 24/7, 365. We're here, even though we've just got that slight small window of college football that starts basically the first weekend of September, August 27th. For those of you that care about Vandy, Hawaii, Nebraska, Northwestern, and I forget who else is playing. A lot of FCS. But welcome in. I am going to need a little bit of a pick-me-up. And no, I'm not going hard liquor tonight. A little bit of a pick-me-up from all of you. I don't know if everybody else is like this or any of you are feeling like this today, but I'm dragging. I'm not sick. Nothing wrong with me. Slight headache. Not a big deal. Dragging. Is there anybody out there that is not existing right now in 90-degree heat? And I'm not complaining about that. Our friend Mike Asti, who was on the West Virginia show with us a few weeks ago, also covers Pitt football and West Virginia football, the Steelers and all the Pittsburgh teams. He was on, and he sent a tweet out today to basically say everybody complains about the heat. Don't complain about the heat. Some of you can complain about the heat because you don't complain about the cold. But most of us complain about the cold, so don't complain about the heat. I won't. I'm not complaining about the heat. I am just stating my frame of mind, and it must be connected to the heat, or it must be connected also with too many things to do. Therefore, I'm kind of frozen and not doing any of them. What could have been a productive Saturday turned out to be a non-productive Saturday. But I would like to know, it would be interesting to see, are any of you either in heat over 100 plus, past the 90s, or you found somewhere cool in the United States that at least is less than 90 right now? I can't guarantee that I'm in 90-degree heat right now. I didn't check the temperature today, but it was supposed to be 94, 95 this weekend. And since we are at 8 o'clock tonight, it might be less than 90. I'm sure it is less than 90 at this point. But in terms of a Saturday high, did anybody escape the 90s? And again, I'm not complaining because I don't like the weather here from mid to late October is usually when the uncomfortable weather kicks in and takes us all the way to, it's all over the place. We get some relief in March with some nice weather. April's typically nothing but rain, but some reprieve. Although I don't think we had much rain this April, but May is typically when we finally get to the point, okay, we're past uncomfortable cold weather. We're past chill in Connecticut. So from May to October, I will take Connecticut weather over just about anywhere in the country for those 5 months. Unfortunately, that doesn't make up for the other 7 months. And again, 14 weeks to college football. Hawaii and Vanderbilt. I should do like a 1-hour special on that game. I want to find our first Vandy fan out there and our first Hawaii fan. We have found some reps of some fan bases that I did not know existed until recently, until the last year, let's say. We've got some Wake Forest fans out there. We found them. Oregon State, we have found them. Washington State, we have found our Washington State fans. Trying to think about anybody else really that stands out. We've got our Nevada fan, of course. That stands out. That's beautiful. I hate to play favorites. But just because of the uniqueness of this in what is typically a Power 5 show, the Nevada helmet is my personal favorite. Nevada. Probably the last time, I can't think of watching a Nevada game since the Purdue game, the upset at Nevada, Rondell Moore's sophomore season, probably. That would be the last time, 2019. Sounds right. All right, let's take your comments and questions. The phone lines are open at 860-499-3332. Before we do, and the phone lines are open, and I will post the number here. No graphics tonight. Look at that. No graphics. That's not good. Amazon. Shop Amazon. Use the link in the description section below. We will post that graphic for sure. Oh, that's right. I can't go back. That's right. Let's match the shirt, too. Very nicely done, Mark. That goes back to our West Virginia show from last night. Did anyone catch the Mountaineer show, our 22nd live show on a Friday night? Every Friday night, typically 8 o'clock Eastern time. We had to move it by 1 hour last night, and we've done a couple Saturday shows, but typically Friday at 8 Eastern, West Virginia Live. West Virginia Live. It's a good time. You got Golden Blue Dude. You've got typically Travis Kenobi from Last Word on College Football joins us. And, of course, Justin Walker, Couz's Corner. These guys are remarkable. They do an amazing job. We have a fun show every week. Chris and I had nothing to talk about. No real West Virginia topics. And we still went over an hour and a half last night. Good times with you. So check out our West Virginia channel. Please subscribe. Right, Joey? Joey's here. He would tell you, get on over to the West Virginia channel and please subscribe. In terms of content, before I take any comments, and we've got 2 phone calls coming in, so I will get to the phone calls. Before I get to those, give me 30 seconds just to let you know. In terms of content, I should have been working on content today. I did work on one channel-related project. I was working on that very slowly, not methodically. It wasn't that efficient. Very like, So that project to be unveiled soon. I'm not holding out on you guys or keeping any secrets, but it's just not ready to be unveiled yet. But big project here at the Voice of College Football coming out this summer. Got to get it out before football season, because I wanted to get it out before the beginning of last football season. I didn't, and there's no way during football season that I can work on it to get it out. So it's going to have to get out here soon. Appreciate everybody being here. Before we take our first phone call, Amazon link. If you spend $100 at Amazon, why give them $100? Spend $100 at Amazon. Not a penny extra, $100 at Amazon, for an example. Nobody misconstrue that. I'm not telling you, you got to spend $100 at Amazon. That's just an example. You send $1 our way, or 5, 3, it depends on the item. That sounds like a better deal than sending the company with $1.6 trillion the full $100, right? So shop Amazon, use the link in the description section below. Please hit the like button before you get settled as well. All right, we have the phone lines open. The calls are waiting. The only thing I need to do is put my earpiece in, and we are ready to roll. We, of course, had our 2 recent call-in shows where we discussed revising national championships. And I think everybody gets me on that. All the main people, all you guys that watch on a regular basis, get what I'm doing there. I believe so. It doesn't seem like too many people have pushback in terms of the process. Like they're on board with and fully supportive of what I'm doing there. Because we do not have a fair situation historically of recognizing national championships. It's not fair. It's more fair today than it's ever been. And it's more fair today than it was in 2013. And in 2013, it was more fair than it was in 1997. But it's still not today fair, and it's never been fair. And we are revising those. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to present that. We've done a couple of call-in shows in which we reviewed going all the way back, I think, to 2005 is where we stand right now. But I'm going to post some videos because, in particular, I think I'm going to attack those Alabama claimed national championships. So Alabama fans, reserve your judgment. Reserve your judgment, Alabama fans. Please reserve your judgment. I know you think that I'm taking national championships away from you. It may not be what you think it is. But I do believe that that being one of the more controversial talking points concerning past national championships, we're going to revise Alabama's national championships because they have not done good bookkeeping there in Tuscaloosa at the university. Poor job historically by Alabama and everybody, and pretty much everybody. Auburn's needs some help too. They've done a poor job. All right, let's get to it here at the Voice of College Football. Caller number 1. Hello, who's on the line? Okay, Willie, give me 2 seconds, Willie, since you are the first caller, of course. That does mean that we've got to fix things. All right, we are all set now, Willie. How are you?
Pretty good. How's it going tonight, Mark?
I am doing well.
You've had some good shows this week, buddy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. We've been here as much as we possibly can. Appreciate you being all over the place with us.
Yeah, I've been trying to follow you around, so it's been kind of tough. A couple of those stations I don't like to listen to. I have a hard time hitting a like on that USC show, but I still do it for you.
I got to think that Michigan one's kind of tough too.
I want to talk to you tonight about the Big Ten schedule first, about when they get rid of divisions. My suggestion is for the Big Ten schedule, every team in the league should have to play either Ohio State or Michigan on their schedule every year. No team in the league should avoid both those teams. That's my first point. If they have, I doubt if they might, some team might have to catch both of them. I don't know. That's purely possible, especially with Ohio State. We probably will play them every year. They'll have to play us every year. So I don't think it should be fair for any other teams in the league not to have to play one of us, because we're clearly the 2 best teams in the league every year, or 90% of the time. I mean, the division playoff games have proved that. The East has won every one, I think. Maybe not. Maybe when they had the leaders and whatever it was, they didn't win. But am I still on here?
You ready for me to cut loose on that one, Willie?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. We were going to take all of college football history, the history of the Big Ten. I'm right there with you. However, Ohio State's been clearly the best for the last 20 years. Michigan, though, like I saw a post on Twitter the other day, somebody has compiled, I think at 247 Sports, every team's record against winning teams, against teams with winning percentages, winning records. What are the various teams in the Big Ten's winning percentage. Well, you can imagine, it's not even close. Ohio State is winning 87% of its games, even against winning teams. And then it goes way down. And this is over the last 10 years. It goes down to Michigan State's number 2 at 58%. So the only reason I bring that up is historically, those are the 2 best programs, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan, Ohio State. Yeah, it's not close. But I don't know if we can give Michigan that kind of respect going forward. I don't think they've earned it right now.
I feel terrible giving Michigan extra respect.
I went through the last 10 years, Willie, and Wisconsin's got the 2nd best record in the conference.
Well, I can believe that. Wisconsin, I looked at their crossover games. They've had fairly easy crossover games since they started the divisions. I think they've only played us a couple times. I thought they played Michigan the most. I thought they'd had 5 crossovers with Michigan and 2 with us. I could be wrong on that. Well, then, I don't know. How do you think they're going to set it up? Pull it out of a hat?
It's probably going to seem like they pulled it out of a hat. This is how I would do it. I would put everyone in one line, no divisions. So everybody's just in the Big Ten. So we're going back to 2010 and for that. And then what I would do is I would protect all the rivalries. So I would get together with all the schools and talk to them about what they believe are the legitimate rivalries that they need to play every year. So for Ohio State, I only think that's Michigan. But if they think it's somebody else, Illinois, I know they've got the Illabuck, whatever they believe, whatever the schools believe, I will respect the schools. And I think for Michigan, it's Michigan State. It's possibly Michigan, Minnesota, although the Big Ten had no issue with splitting them up. So anyway, I would protect the rivalries every year.
Yes, that's a great idea, but I'm sure nobody else is going to say they have a rivalry with Michigan, because Michigan's probably the only one that will say that, because I know they'll play us, but these other teams will probably try to avoid us, is my guess.
When I say I'm just going to go to the schools, that doesn't mean they're going to dictate what I'm going to do. I'm going to have discussions with the schools, but we're going to protect the rivalries. I only say that to mean I'm not going to dictate everything and just say I'm the czar and I'm going to mandate what the rivalries are. I want input from people that know what they're talking about. So Big Ten people are going to get together. We're going to decide what the rivalries are. And those rivalries are going to be protected. And
so you would have one rivalry or 2 rivalries?
No, but
some teams could have one, some teams could have 2.
Absolutely. And why should that I don't understand. These conferences are so locked into everybody having to have the same number of rivals. Why? The SEC does the same thing. The ACC does the same thing. Everybody has to have one rival on the other side of the division, of the other conference in the other division. Why? Some teams have 3, some have 1. Just protect whatever makes sense. They don't have to be the same. There just has to be the same number of games in the schedule. So
are they going to 8 or 9 games?
Again, that doesn't matter to me. I'm good with either one. I really am. I do believe that 9 is a more legitimate championship. The Big 12 has the most legitimate championship. I'm going to applaud the Big 12, even though they didn't decide it. They kind of fell into it. But they've got the most legitimate championship, the Big 12, because everybody plays everyone. So anyway, let's say we go with 9 games.
Let's kick some teams out of the Big 10 so we can play everybody. I got no problem with that.
Let's go to 10 teams in the Big 10.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of teams in the Big 10 that aren't bringing in any money to us.
I don't know about that, but they're bringing in nothing substantial. Rutgers gone, Maryland gone. Who else are we going to kick out, though? Besides those 2, I'm kind of uncomfortable kicking anybody else out.
Well, I go say, look at the last 20 years in records, and if you're at the bottom, you're history.
All right. Well, we're all over the place here, Willie. So let me try to clean a few things up. I restructured college football about 5 years ago. I posted a video, said this is how I would do it, and the Big Ten would have 12 teams. Every conference would have the same number of teams, 12 teams, and I had 12 teams in the Big Ten. But besides that, let's just deal with what they've got right now. They've got 14 teams, and I think even though I think there are benefits to having an 8-game schedule or a 9-game schedule, we'll go with 9 because we want the most legitimate championship. I would protect all the rivalries that matter, and it doesn't matter if a team has 1 rival or they've got 4 rivals. I don't think anybody's got 4 legitimate rivals. I think it's going to be 1 or 2, maybe 3, maybe 3 for a few teams. And then I'm going to build a schedule, Willie, every year in the Big Ten that every team is going to play a 500 record from the previous season, meaning if you add up all the teams that they play, they're going to play a composite 500 schedule. Therefore, it's a fair schedule. I'm going to build a fair schedule.
I saw you do that with one of the other leagues, and it worked really well. The problem is, if you were the commissioner, I'm sure it would work out great. But isn't it Kevin Warren that is the commissioner right now?
Yeah. Hopefully he's learning on the job.
That's right. Now, Michigan's probably going to have 2 rivals. They're going to have us and Michigan State.
Yep.
That's my guess. I don't know who Penn State's rival would be. I mean, what are they going to claim Rutgers?
they might want to, sure. They used to have a rivalry with Maryland. Now, that was a long time ago, so I don't consider them rivals now. But, back in the old days, as you well know, Syracuse and BC, Penn State, Pitt, Maryland, West Virginia, all those teams played every year in the East. But that was a long time ago. So, we could make up a couple rivals if schools really believe that they want to form a rivalry with each other. Maryland, Rutgers, Penn State, Maryland, but we don't have to do that. I don't think it's that complicated. I just don't want unfair scheduling. To your point, I don't want somebody to have. So let me say it this way. I go through the schedules every year, and last year, well, I did it this year as well, but it's not coming to mind exactly the inequity, but there may be a team in a division that plays 3 teams in the West, let's say, that went 27-9 the year before, and somebody else plays 3 teams that went 9-27. Well, that's not fair. I want a balanced schedule. I want equity in the scheduling. And then all you have to do is keep track to make sure that schools aren't not playing for too long a period of time. That's all you'd have to keep track of.
Well, I'm sure one thing you can count on, whatever schedule comes out, everybody's going to be mad about the first one. There's no doubt about that. Because I remember when the Big Ten was back in the 60s, there was 10 teams in the Big Ten, and we hardly ever played Iowa. That was one team we rarely played. We played Michigan State most of the time, Indiana, but we played 7 Big Ten games and 2 non-conference in the 9-game schedule back then. So we only played 7 Big Ten games, so it was 3 teams we missed even back in the 60s. So I don't know. I mean, I just put it out. I know Ohio State, we're going to play anybody. So it really doesn't. I was giving Michigan a little more credit than I guess I should have when I said every team should play Michigan and Ohio State. Simply because last year they had a crap. Last year before they had the COVID year, they were terrible. But before that, Harbaugh had a couple decent years. But you're probably right about Wisconsin. I mean, Iowa seems to always have a decent record. Now Minnesota's not bad this year, but but how long? Some of these teams in the West, how long can they sustain good records? Whereas you get Ohio State, we're probably good every year. So I think maybe they should hire you to make out the schedule. that's my suggestion.
Well, Willie, I'll tell you, that brings to mind Jim Delaney told me one time at a luncheon that he would like to hire me as he was kidding, but he did make the comment he would like to hire me to be the what did he call me? Some kind of heading up public relations or marketing or something for the Big Ten, because I basically he came to ESPN twice, and I was fortunate enough to, it was a large luncheon. It wasn't like I was having lunch with Jim Delaney. There were about 100 people there, but we got to ask questions. And I basically outlined for him why the Big Ten was getting ripped off in the bowl system and in their matchups with the SEC, and what they could do to fix that. And yeah, he was a great commissioner. And what they're going to do, Willie, is basically they're going to come up with some kind of system where there is going to be rivalries protected, and then they're going to have some kind of rotation. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that.
Okay. Now, I have one other question for you, if it's okay.
Sure.
About Ohio State's schedule this year and how our season's going to go. This year, last year we had those guys sit out and we had replacements for them in the Rose Bowl. This year, the way I see it is, we don't get into playoffs, we're going to be losing a lot of players for the bowl game, and we don't have the top flight replacements for them that we will have. Because if we go to the Rose Bowl again, instead of the playoffs, say we lose one game and somehow we lose to Notre Dame, or we beat Notre Dame, but then we lose to Penn State and somehow they win every game. Or Michigan and they win every game, or they lose one game outside, but they win their Big Ten games. And we end up not going to the playoffs, and we play in the Rose Bowl. If you look at our roster, we're going to be short like probably 10 or 12 players easy in that game. And we don't have the replacements for most of those players. So this season for us is really playoffs or bust, is the way I'm looking at it. What do you think?
Well, isn't it the playoffs or bust anyway? I don't think you should be too concerned, Willie, about not making the playoffs and losing opt-outs for the Rose Bowl. I think we're way ahead of the game there, if that's where your mind is right now.
We got top 25. I mean, I predict, we've got 6 top 25 opponents on our schedule. 4 at home, a couple on the road, 4 at home and 2 on the road. I've known enough about watching Big Ten football games that most of the teams you play, especially on the road, if they're halfway decent teams, it could turn into a hard game. I mean, look at Minnesota last year. Well, that was our first game. I mean, I think looking at our schedule, I think this is probably one of our toughest schedules we've had in the last few years. I mean, we opened with Notre Dame. We've got Penn State and Michigan State on the road. Then Iowa, Wisconsin, and Michigan at home besides Notre Dame. So that's 6 right there. I mean, and then we've got Indiana there. We'll hammer them. I don't know who our other crossover game is. It's Northwestern, so we'll hammer them. Yeah. And then we got the non-conference games. We'll put there, but we got Notre Dame, so that's 4 right there. So that's 10 of our games. So we probably got 2 more. Oh, we've got Rutgers and Maryland, so we'll hammer them. But I'm looking ahead. I don't want to see us lose too many games. So I'm thinking we got to get to the championship. We have to get to the championship every year, but I think this year is more than any other year we need to get to the championship.
All right, Willie. Well, I would not be working out a plan for Ohio State to miss the playoffs and be working on their consolation bowl game quite yet.
I always look ahead, Mark. I have my whole life. That's why I'm looking up all these schedules and all these stats all the time. So I don't think we will lose, but you never know. Something could happen. He could miss one game. We lose that game, and it's cool. But I'm hoping we're going to win them all. So I'll get off here and let everybody else come on here and probably say I'm crazy and don't know what I'm talking about. Thanks a lot for taking my call.
All right, Willie. I appreciate it. Yeah, there was a time last year, especially after the Oregon game, that I said my projection on Ohio State originally was 11-1. And then after they lost to Oregon, I said most likely they're going to go 10-2. And yeah, the backlash I took for that. So Terry is saying, as we get ready to take this next call, Terry is saying, do it like the ACC 3-5-4, which he means 3-5-5. So you play 3 teams every year. They are designated rivals. And then the rest of the conference opponents are 10 in total. And so you split them 5-5 and you alternate them each year. I don't like that system. I don't think you should just make up opponents. So take any team. Take whatever team you want to. Clemson. Okay. Georgia Tech's going to be one of their main 3 that they play every year. They are going to be the first one. They're the most important one. They're the most important rival. They are the rival of Clemson. Okay. Georgia Tech. Then I guess the next one's going to be Florida State, I guess, because of recent history. They would only be going on recent history in what is expected to be a big game. Hasn't been for 5 years, but used to be. And then let's say it's, I don't know, North Carolina State. Well, you could do this with any team. What makes some of those 3 that they play every year, what makes those teams any more important to that team than the other teams that they don't play every year? If you get my point. That's a generic number made up because it fits a system, 3, 5, and 5. And not everybody has 2 or 3 rivals. So why be forced to play a team every year when they are no more important to your football history than other teams in the conference? Why are we forcing rivalries? Why are we pinning teams together that have nothing to do with each? Why does Texas A&M and South Carolina play every year? What do they have to do with one another? Nothing. The SEC rarely does anything stupid. But making South Carolina and Texas A&M, I cannot think of 2 teams in the SEC that have less to do with one another than South Carolina and Texas A&M, and they are playing every year. Just think of it this way. If Texas and Oklahoma had not joined the SEC, because that's going to change the entire division format, pod format, whatever they go to, over the next 70 years, Texas A&M would play South Carolina 70 times in the next 70 years, and they would play Georgia 10 times. Think about how insane that is. And there's no reason for it. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello?
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 Yes. Who's on the line?
Oh, it's Chris, and I don't want to waste
Chris.
much of your time, Mark, because I know they said, Tim Prangley said they want to have first-time callers calling in. I'm obviously not one of them, but I was just going to ask you, and you give your honest opinion. If you don't have to worry about what I think of it, but when the SEC, and I don't know, didn't it come out, somebody kind of broke the news without, they weren't going to invite, I don't think, Oklahoma and Texas until, in fact, I'm not sure that's going to happen until later on, but can you explain to me, other than the fact that they're big, they're big blue bloods, does that make a big difference in terms of the image that the SEC has as far as, will that prop their image up, having those 2 teams in there, do you think?
Yes, I do. I believe
Well, I mean, but
there
substantially, though?
Yes.
See, that's where I kind of wonder because, and I'm not saying it wouldn't, but I know both of them are, have a huge, long-standing tradition of being outstanding. But, I was kind of, because I kind of try to think outside the box a little bit. I was kind of wondering why, for example, even though it wouldn't necessarily benefit football, wouldn't there be some benefit maybe if they, because given the fact that Missouri and Kansas are natural rivals, I would think that maybe a better fit for the SEC might be Kansas. But do you think that's not a good idea?
Chris, I get your point. But the SEC doesn't want another Vanderbilt. They don't need Kansas. Kansas doesn't help them at all. Any conference in America would want to have Texas and Oklahoma. Any conference in America would love to have the prestige, the brand name, the ratings, the fan base, the recruiting, the facilities, everything. They are plus. And I know Texas has not been good on the field for most of the last 12 years, but they still bring a lot. Kansas brings, from a football standpoint, Kansas is actually a detriment.
I was just kind of looking through the history, and I know Kansas isn't one of the ones that people, especially lately, they haven't been especially very good, but they're surprisingly consistent though, as far as, I know that because of the, people tend to look more on the recent years to make an opinion about any program, I guess, which I guess is a normal thing to do. But I think it was Kansas last year, wasn't it, that actually beat Texas? And then, I'm just kind of wondering, and I don't know if they're trying up or not, but I would think that you would consider that before you made like a decision about which teams to include. And so I'm not saying that they shouldn't include Texas. That might be the smartest thing they could do, but I'm just wondering, when you talk about long-term, like I think you just talked about it, looking 20 years into the future and all that, how does anybody really know that 20 years from now it's going to be? That's kind of where I have a question is, I know that there's been a long-standing tradition of Texas being much better than almost anybody. I mean, I understand that. But how does anybody know that 20 years from now it's going to still be like that?
Well, how do we know that the world's going to exist in 20 years? We can't live like that, Chris. We have to make decisions based on the knowledge that we have and the data we have. And there's just, if you would have brought to me something like a comparison between should they have brought on Texas and Oklahoma or should they have brought on Florida State and Clemson, then we could be debating that for hours. But to compare Texas and Kansas,
well,
there's nothing to
consider
consider
there. Beat them last year? Am I wrong? I thought Kansas beat them last year.
Everybody beat everybody at some point that's ever played more than a few times.
Right.
There's no comparison between the two football brands.
The brand, okay.
Yeah, everything related to the brand.
I understand. No, I know what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it. It's just I just kind of wonder if they're thinking, potential for upward. I don't know a whole lot about. You already know I don't know a whole lot about football, but I would think Kansas just didn't they do pretty well last year in the championship. I think you have to kind of think in terms of everything that they bring, and I would think. If you bring in a Kansas, but it's not just going to be your football. It's going to be other things besides just football. And I'm not saying that Texas might not be a better fit for what the SEC is about, but that's kind of where I have a question though, because I would think that if you have another option there that might bring just as much, which I'm not saying they would, but why is it focused solely on football? That's where I'm kind of confused because if you know that if you get with Kansas, you get an outstanding basketball team. Maybe that trumps a little bit of the other stuff that maybe you would get with the Texas. That's kind of where I'm coming from. I don't know that. To me, it's not as clear as it might be to you that one is much better than the other. I don't really get that impression, even though you're probably right.
Well, the points that
I'm missing something.
The points that you bring to the table are valid. They are. I would love to be able to make a good analogy here. It would be like saying, do you want this house that's worth $100,000 and by every available resource, we know that it's worth $100,000 and we know all the issues that it has with it. There are plumbing issues, there are flooding issues, there needs a new roof. It's just it needs a whole lot, and nobody's ever been able to fix it to a point and the flooding issue can't be fixed unless you completely, reconstruct landscaping and all sorts of things. So there's $100,000 house that's got all these issues, and there's a $1 million house across the street, and it has no such issues. But the $100,000 house has some nice curtains in one bedroom, and the $1 million house has a snag in the carpet. Those would be the comparisons between Texas and Kansas. It's just, and understand, Chris, that you are picking out a program where the basketball is more important than football. And there's a few programs out there like that. Basically, Duke and Kansas for sure. Kentucky's catching up in football. North Carolina's catching up in football. And even though those are basketball programs at Kentucky and North Carolina, I guarantee the football programs make them more money. So football is just so much more important than basketball from a monetary standpoint. It's not even close.
Well, but still, I mean, if Kansas is actually winning, I mean, when they actually play, and I know that was just 1 year, and I think Texas still never really won. I think they rallied to tie it, and it went to overtime, and I think it was questionable whether Texas didn't actually win the game. But I guess my point still is the same. I mean, if you know one team is at least as good as the other, at least for one season, I guess we're limiting it to one season, but I don't personally see a big advantage to taking the one that lost over the one that won. But I know that's like maybe looking at it in too narrow vision. But that's kind of my point, though, is it's like if you have a choice between one that minimally can challenge and one that even maybe if it looks good better on paper and maybe long term, like we say, long term might actually do better. My perspective is different because I would think that, you want to take everything into account. And I'm not saying that Texas isn't better. You're probably right. I'm not saying they're not. But if you have the option to select one, maybe you don't have to give up as much to bring in, and maybe has a longer, I don't know what the longer term prospectus would be on either one, but that's where I get kind of confused because it's not as clear to me that one necessarily stands apart from the other. But that's just based on what I see on, that's based on short term, not long term. And the other thing I think is, for example, one reason Texas A&M left the Big 12, but they didn't really like being together with, Texas doesn't really like having a lot of people that are, challenging them at once. I don't think I don't know that they're really a good fit for the SEC. It's kind of where I'm coming from there. I don't think they're going to like it there, but maybe I'm wrong.
Was Texas A&M a good fit for the SEC?
I don't know. I have no idea. That's why I'm asking you. Because I don't know.
Well, I already answered your question 10 minutes ago that there's no comparison between Texas and Kansas. It's just, I can't even begin to explain. I thought I did, that it's not even close.
Yeah.
You're citing one
Except
game.
Kansas beat them.
Okay. Let's go back 15, 16 years. Louisiana Tech beat Alabama. Should the SEC have said, you know what, we're kicking Alabama out of the SEC because they just lost to Louisiana Tech. So Louisiana Tech must be better than Alabama. We're kicking Alabama out of the league. Louisiana Tech's a much better and more profitable school and much more important to college football history, has better facilities, resources, fan base. Let's take Louisiana Tech. Did the SEC do that because of one game?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm telling you,
Chris, there's no comparison. Again, let's say you would have called and said, why didn't the SEC pursue Clemson and Florida State instead of Texas and Oklahoma? We could still be having a conversation 3 hours from now because that's a reasonable comparison. There's no comparison between Texas and Kansas.
My suspicion is I think Texas is going to get cold feet, and I don't think they're going to want to move. I guess that remains to be seen. But I think if they get a bigger, if they get a draw of the proceeds or whatever, maybe that's the motivation behind it. But apart from that, I don't really
You
see
think
a whole
it's
lot of benefit
motivation?
from them leaving.
You think it's motivation? It is the motivation.
Okay.
Texas and Oklahoma are going to make a lot more money in the SEC than they did in the Big 12.
Short term, probably.
Short term?
Right? Over the short.
Well, yeah, we don't know the world's gonna look like in 100 years, but what's the only thing that's changing is that the SEC is getting even more dominant, and they're even more valuable with Texas and Oklahoma.
I guess it's not as clear to me as it is to you, because I just kind of see it that, and especially with the fact that the Big 12 is looking to, and they will be up, obviously they're going to be including some other teams, but, I don't see that there's a huge advantage. I'll just put it that way. I don't really see that there's a huge advantage for either one of those teams to leave the Big 12, given the fact that the Big 12 is actually looking to include some better teams.
Money.
I would think they might be better off, both of them actually, just staying where they are. But that's without knowing exactly what.
You're right. If all they care about is beating lesser teams and having a better record, yeah.
But they're not lesser.
You've got a case for that.
You think those are lesser teams
in the Big 12 than the SEC?
You know what? I did a kind of and I don't want to take much more of your time, Mark, because I know you have other people to talk to, but we were talking about Vanderbilt. They're roughly actually comparable to Brigham Young as far as, it's interesting. I mean, I know you would put them at the lower edge of the SEC or whatever, but competitively, they stand up pretty good against BYU. That's where they stand. Vanderbilt, you could put them about on the same. That's over the course of like their whole history, and that's assuming I know what I'm talking about, which is maybe not completely accurate. But I did kind of a check to see, and actually, because of the fact they're in the SEC, that makes it a lot harder for Vanderbilt to actually win. So, like, if you put BYU in the SEC, they'd stack up about right where Vanderbilt is. That's where they would sit. Brigham Young, in fact, they might not be quite as good as Vanderbilt. So when you put down Vanderbilt, you're kind of saying that Brigham Young isn't worth a hoot. That's just from my perspective. They're roughly comparable.
Well, I appreciate the call, Chris. Have a good night.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
What's up, Mark? How you doing, man?
Hey, DeAndre. What's going on tonight?
Good. You know what? I kind of understand where the guy's coming with the question about Kansas. Not because Texas had a good football and basketball team this past year. I mean, I don't remember what they did in football, but traditionally, everybody knows Texas has a good football program. But, they've been doing good at basketball the last couple of years. But when Kansas was looking to move away from the Big 12, they said Kansas and Duke can literally supply their whole sports organization off their basketball program because of their brand. I can't tell you which article it was, but I know Kansas was looking at it at one point, going independent until they got all those other teams in there. And they said that, the basketball team could support it. So I can see where it would have been a big benefit for as far as like Kansas basketball going to SEC, but you're right that it wouldn't help with football. It wouldn't help the SEC at all. Which SEC really don't really need any help. I mean, let's just be honest about it. And they get in Texas basketball program. That's still a pretty good program. I think they started top 10 this year in basketball. And I think a perfect fit for Kansas probably would have been the Big 10, to be honest with you. But it is what it is. But what I called to ask you about is your first caller was talking about the Big 10 rivalry. So I know Wisconsin and Michigan Minnesota and Michigan has a rivalry. And then Wisconsin and Minnesota has a rivalry. And they go to the ACC format. Who would Michigan State other rival be? Michigan? I know Michigan, but who else would it have be? Or like Northwestern, Illinois, I know they have some type of rivalry. But who would all these other teams play? Indiana, I know it's Purdue, Indiana, and I really can't think of anybody else that they have a rivalry with. I mean, I'm just asking because I'm not a real big Big Ten fan. Only time I watched the Big Ten was Ohio State and Michigan, and when Michigan used to play Notre Dame back in the day.
Okay, DeAndre, who are you looking for here? Who do you want rivalries for? Michigan State?
Yeah.
That was the first team you brought up, Michigan State. Michigan? Okay. Since Penn State joined the Big Ten, the Big Ten has lined up Penn State and Michigan State to play the final weekend of the season every year except for 2 or 3. So they've been playing for 30 years, and whatever the trophy name is, you got those two. So Michigan,
I believe.
I would guess, yes, there you go.
Yeah.
I would guess Michigan, of course, and Penn State for Michigan State. And then the other one. So basically what these conferences are going to do is they're going to protect the rivalries, but then they're just going to fill in slots. The other, just like the SEC and the ACC do right now, the SEC has designated a rival outside the division for every team. Well, Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, Georgia, LSU, Florida. The other ones are just made up. They're just placeholders. They're going to do the same thing when they have 3. Virginia Tech doesn't have 3 rivals. They barely have a rival. They have them paired up with Boston College, which makes no sense in the ACC. But if they have to have 3 teams for Virginia Tech, well, it's obviously going to be Virginia.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, I would think they're going to try to pair them with Miami. But a lot of the third teams with those ACC teams are going to be a little haphazard because they're going to be just trying to fill in slots at that point. And that's what I don't agree with.
Yeah, because as an the ACC, and I heard you talk about this, but the ACC, Carolina, I think I brought this up to your attention. Theirs is easy. It's going to be Duke State and UVA. Clemson, that's a tricky one because Georgia Tech, because of vicinity, and they have had a lot of good games. I think the original teams that played in the 80s, and not count Florida State, I know they came in the 90s, but I think that Georgia Tech has a winning record versus Clemson since they joined the ACC. NC State, I mean, how many big games have they had? When I say big games, if you go back to 1988, which I like to talk about a lot, I always say that NC State upset Clemson that caused them not to have a chance at a national championship. They did like that 2-3 years with Dick Sherrington in 2007. So I could see the rivalry with there. But like you said, your people said that that you talked about on Florida State, so doesn't see Clemson as a rival. And I think that's kind of unfair to Florida State because you get Miami and Clemson every year, then have to play Florida. So that's 3 hard games right off the bat with teams that projectionally ain't going anywhere. Projectionally, they're not going anywhere. So I don't see how that's fair. And I wouldn't even know who Florida State's next rival would be. I think everybody said UVA. But it doesn't make any sense how they want to do this, man. I really don't feel it like everybody else does. I like the fact they get rid of division, but having rivalries that you try to keep, like you said, like three rival games. I don't think that's going to work out very well. The only one that makes sense to me is Pitt and Louisville. When you think about Pitt and Virginia Tech, and that's because of the Big East ties. I mean, that's just. I wouldn't know who Miami's third game would be. I mean, to me, it would be Boston College to Miami, because of their history, and that's only because of one play. I mean, I'm sure Miami dominated Boston College most of those times they played throughout history. I can't think of outside of Devin Flutie, Hail Mary, them ever beating Miami. Not to my knowledge. You might know more. I even when Hasselbeck was there, I don't remember them beating Miami. They might have, but I don't really remember. So I don't understand that either.
I would guess that in the last 15 years, Boston College's record's almost as good as Miami's. I don't know what the head-to-head is.
I'm just saying as far as them playing as no, I'm just saying as far as rival. I'm not doubting that. I mean, I'm just saying as far as them being rivals, I said, what would make more sense as a rival for Miami as the third game outside of Virginia Tech and Florida State. I don't see who else you would put in there versus them. I'm sure that Boston College Say, Mark, I'm listening.
The one thing that I like about this 3-3-5 or 3-5-5 format for the ACC is that it just it allows teams to play more often. So that's the one thing it accomplishes, is that you don't have this ridiculous rotation schedule in the other division where you only see a team once every 6 years. So it works from that standpoint. You're going to see everybody.
North Carolina.
You're going to see everybody every other year.
Yeah.
All right, DeAndre.
So I was listening to you, but no, I got a question for you. So I was listening to you talk about that you're going to do something about the national championships, questioning some of them. I know we talked about this enough, but Miami national championship need to be questioned along with Alabama. I hope you look into all of them, because I still say in 1984 that championship should have went to Auburn. I don't know which ones you're referring to about Auburn being questioned, but I think Auburn should have claimed the national championship. I saw in '84. I mean, what year did BYU win it? 83.
Yeah, the Auburn year with Miami's 83.
But what year did BYU win it?
84.
84. So I see some people giving it to what's that school called? Florida. Why is that? Florida was on probation that year?
Yes. They went 9-1-1.
So why did some people give it to them? Their schedule was real hard that year?
Yeah, tough schedule. They played really well against a tough schedule. And Washington lost once, and Florida once, and BYU no losses, and everybody else had more than 2 losses. So,
yeah, I know. Yeah, I know the story, but I was just wondering why does a lot of people consider Florida a national champion that year. But I know I forgot it. I knew they was on probation.
I do too. I've got
you know
it right
who they
there.
lost was to?
I don't remember. But
okay, yeah.
I've gone through the last
I'm sure
100 years.
One of them probably was. Yep. Another question I have for you.
Yep.
A lot of people don't consider it's a rival. Florida and Tennessee is more of a recent rivalry, ain't it?
Florida and Tennessee?
I mean, when I say recent, I'm talking about since like maybe 1987.
Yeah, Florida,
was
Tennessee.
Was it a big rivalry back in the 60s and 60s? Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't that big of a game back then, was it? I mean, like when I say big game, like Alabama, Tennessee, everybody knows at one point that was a big rivalry. But that's what I'm asking. Tennessee or Florida is pretty much a new rivalry. Sort of like who I want to bring up, like closer than Florida State. That's a new rivalry. It's nothing.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't make that comparison, because Clemson, Florida State joined the SEC or the ACC in '92. So I know that they played before that on a fairly regular basis, but they weren't in the same conference until '92. And then they really weren't playing meaningful games, high-stake championship games, until the 2000s, until really 2011 or 12, 13. While Tennessee and Florida, they've been in the SEC together for a long, long time. I forget what the years are. I just did a video on that a few months ago talking about the SEC and the all-time rankings. So they've been in the same conference for all that time. Yeah, Tennessee. I consider Tennessee and Florida rivals. I don't consider them to be the Iron Bowl or anything, but they're rivals.
Well, what I'm saying is, what I'm saying is, I'm sorry, when somebody texts me something. Well, what I'm saying is, I think I'm not sure. Well, Florida, Tennessee, at a certain point, they didn't play every year until they went to when they expanded the conference in 1996. If I remember right.
Sure.
So that's why they said it wasn't like a big rival. Like Auburn and Georgia, for the last 100 years, played all the time, or even like if you look at like Alabama, LSU, it's a rivalry. It's more of a recent rivalry than it was back in the day because they really didn't play that much. Am I correct? And that's what I'm saying. So Tennessee and Florida, yeah, we remember Steve Spurrier and Phil Farmer rock games and Peyton Manning and that back and forth between with Steve Spurrier. That's what I'm saying. It's more of a more recent rivalry than it is like, hey, Auburn and Georgia have been playing each other every year for 100 years, or Alabama, Tennessee. Alabama on their run was only one challenge. Tennessee was only one challenge in Alabama when Bear Bryant was there. I'm sure there was other crews, but that's what I'm trying to get at.
Tennessee and Florida have played every year since 1990. And before that, they were playing sporadically. I don't know what the SEC scheduling format was before they split into divisions in 92. I know that even through the 90s or the 80s that they were only playing 6-game conference schedules, and they had 10 teams. So they had 9 opponents and they were only playing 6 conference games. So they were missing a lot of teams. Now, obviously, Alabama, Auburn were playing every year, and there were certain games that they were making sure were being played every year, but the other teams were not playing every year. So however you term, everybody's got a different criteria for rivals. Again, do I consider Florida, Tennessee a rivalry? Yeah, to a certain extent.
Yeah, because what I'm saying is not an old rivalry. That's what I'm saying. It's like everybody remembers those games in the 90s. I don't remember them as much as I did in the 90s, but they were real good games. I remember when T. Martin finally beat Florida. I think the final score was like 35-29 or something like that. I can remember those games. They were great. They were great games. Peyton Manning never could beat. I think Peyton Manning finally beat him as the senior year. But
I don't think he beat them. They went to the SEC championship game, but I believe they lost the game. Let's see here.
Right.
I will make sure. So Peyton Manning's first year, I was actually at Peyton Manning's second game I think he ever played at Tennessee against Mississippi State. So anyway, 1994, Florida won. 95, Florida. 96 and 7. Yeah, Peyton Manning did not beat Florida, but his senior season they won the division.
Wow. Next time I'm gonna let you go, but next time we get to talk, to Jason and Pete and whoever else you bring on, I'm gonna talk about the lack of development of Clemson players on the offensive line and the linebacker spot. I know they had a couple of offensive line mistakes in the last couple of years, but I watch a lot of football as far as pros, and they saying Carmen Jackson is almost out of the league. He's only been there for a year, and they said they drafted a guy to try to push him. And Carmen Jackson, if I remember right, was like a top 10 player. Now I understand that it goes up to self-development, but look at Mitch Hyatt, and I didn't ask y'all about Christian Lay. We have not heard hide or hear for it. So I wonder, some of these guys get beat out for Clemson players, like the dude went from Clemson to Notre Dame. I'm trying to figure out if our development at the defensive on the offensive line is an issue. and maybe that's why Clemson is struggling. And getting some of these players compared to Alabama and Georgia, because Georgia and Alabama always get the top offensive linemen. I don't know about Ohio State, but I know those two schools specifically are always getting the best offensive linemen in the country. And I wonder if that needs to be addressed by Clemson is getting a better offensive line coach. And also look at the linebackers. Don't get me wrong. I know Skowski and Bullware are not athletes and stuff, not great athletes, but they were good football players. And if you look outside of Goodson, who played with the Giants, Browns, and Colts, we have not had many linebackers in recent history under Dabo get drafted into the NFL. And I know people are going to say, well, what about Simmons? But, I mean, he was really a tweener. He did everything. And the Cardinals do the same thing with him. He's slash DB, slash linebacker. So I wonder is our development of our linebackers and offensive line is hurting us in recruiting. And like I said, I know we got like Jeremiah Trout's son there, and the young man that's there now, who's got moved into middle linebacker. But I wonder if our development is at the linebacker position and offensive line is hurting our recruiting, especially at the offensive line, because we have not put anybody in there. I mean, I know Alabama's putting a lot of offensive linemen in, and even if they don't do good at left tackle, a lot of times they get moved over to right tackle like Andre Smith, and they have a pretty long career. So I'm just wondering what's going on with the offensive line development, and that's something that I want to talk about next time we all get together. So, but you have a great night, Mark. And I know what Jason and Pete's going to say. Well, once they leave Clemson, they don't have nothing to do with us. But I said, your development starts high school, college, and pros. And that's just something I wonder about.
All right, DeAndre. Sounds good.
All right.
Well, I appreciate the call.
All right.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. To address a few things on the screen, web security. I appreciate your perspective right there. Mark, can you please declare a champion for each year so nothing is shared? Okay. I would like if throughout the history of college football, there was one champion for every season, a legitimate champion for every season. In a sense, that's not possible, though. Okay. It's not the NFL. It's not Major League Baseball. There wasn't a fair season with a playoff format that determined a champion. So the fair way to do it is to look at all the contenders and then determine who has right to declare or claim a championship. So, for example, in 1977, Notre Dame 11-1, Texas 11-1, Arkansas 11-1, Bama 11-1, Penn State 11-1, Kentucky 11-1. Now, when we get a season like that, and yes, Notre Dame beat Texas in the Cotton Bowl. You could say they won by 4 touchdowns. That eliminates Texas. Fine. Texas beat Arkansas. Okay. How does that happen? But Arkansas has no connection to Notre Dame. It may have had just as difficult a schedule. So my thought is that I want to go through every year. I already have, but I'm going to comb through just to make sure I haven't missed anything. And I'm going to determine, okay, for this particular season, we've got 3 12-1 teams. They didn't play each other. They all have difficult schedules to varying degrees, but they're basically playing 4 or 5 top 25 teams and let's say roughly 3 top 10 teams. So their schedules are comparable. They all went 12-1. So who should be the national champion? Well, if you're an AP voter in 1975, then you can only do one of two things. You can only list your top 25. Even if you fully believe that there's a debate or it's not fair to award one national champion, you were forced to lists just one team at number one. So I'm not blaming the voters most of the time. There are some horrible votes out there. There were some years in which the vote made no sense. Okay, so we're going to point that out. But most of the time, it wasn't that the voters did a poor job. It was that it was an impossible call to make. You had more than one team that had a legitimate claim to a national championship. So I'm actually adding national championships more than I'm subtracting. I am subtracting some, but I'm adding more than I'm subtracting because there are other teams. So think about it. If you only consider the coaches poll and the AP poll to be the valid championships through 1997, then you could only have one national champion or a split vote. You couldn't have like 8 national champions. But if you include all these crazy polls and metrics that are out there, and some of them are valid and others are not, then you could have 10 national champions in a given year. I just want to recognize every team that has a legitimate claim to a national championship. Now, if you want me, in addition to that, to tell you who I believe was the best team with the best season, I can do that. I don't want to recognize them solely as the national champion just because I thought they were the best team. I'm trying to put together a system in which we say, like Porter pointed out, 1942. I'm right there with you, Porter. 1942. Ohio State, Georgia shared a national championship in my eyes in 1942. Because in many years, it is impossible to distinguish. You can have an opinion. I'm not saying not have an opinion to say, I think they were the best team. Sure. But it's impossible to distinguish in many years that there was only one team that earned or deserved to claim a national championship. Most seasons, there are multiple teams pre-playoff. Post-playoff, I think there's only one team that can legitimately say, we can claim a national championship. And again, don't misconstrue this. I'm not saying that they're the best team. I'm saying that they can legitimately claim a championship. And that's UCF in 2017. Because the national champion lost a game. They didn't lose a game. And they beat the team that beat the national champion. And they beat the team that beat the team that lost the national championship game. So again, we can go through all these years, and most of the time there is a debate. I've got a good stretch of years in the 80s where I don't think there's a debate. And again, I'm going to review these years again just to make sure I didn't miss anything. But 85 Oklahoma, 86 Penn State, 87 Miami, 88 Notre Dame, 89 Miami. And really 1990 Georgia Tech. We know what happened with Colorado. They should not have earned or claimed a national championship. It's not their fault. But that should have gone solely to Georgia Tech. Now, again, that's different than who I think was the best team. In 1990, I think Miami was the best football team. Georgia Tech won the national championship. So does that make sense? But I can add that too at Web Security. I can say, all right, I'm giving this particular year to these 3 teams to claim a national championship. But I believe that so-and-so played the toughest schedule and had the best team for these reasons, A, B, and C. I can do that. All right. We do have a caller on the line. Can't wait to talk to them. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hi, Mark. It's Joey.
Joey, how are you?
I am great, man. I'm great. So, well, they're talking national championships. You was talking there. You reminded me of like 93. I'll go back to 93. I know we've talked about it before, but, you know, West Virginia was number 1 in the coaches poll. Nebraska was number 1 in the AP poll. I think those two should have played each other, but they didn't. You talk about teams that beat the teams that beat the teams. Notre Dame was number 1, got beat by Boston College. Boston College turned around, lost to West Virginia. Miami was number 4, lost to West Virginia. So, yeah, I think that, West Virginia and Nebraska should have played that year. Florida State got the call, so that's how it worked. That ain't really what I called for, though. I wanted to call and throw you on the spot for Oklahoma. I wanted to go over Oklahoma's schedule with you and see what you thought. See if you could throw out some wins and losses.
Okay.
All right. Their first game, they play UTEP.
I'm gonna need about 45 minutes to think about that one.
Yeah. Second game is Kent State, so that's an easy win.
Okay.
All right. Their third one, they played the best 3-9 team in the country last year.
So do you just want me to tell you who's going to win the game right now?
Yeah. Who do you think will win it?
Well, I don't think it's an easy call, but I'll say Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma will win the game, but I think it'll be close. I think Nebraska is going to be pretty good this year.
But who knows what I'm going to say come the week of the game. That's a long ways away.
Right.
But right now, Oklahoma.
Right. A lot of people in the chat were talking about Oklahoma. I thought we'd just get your view on it. All right, so week 4 is Kansas State. They get Kansas State at home.
Oklahoma.
That's always their arch nemesis. Kansas State beat them 2 of the last 3 times at home.
Yep.
The next game they play TCU, and TCU's not going to be very good this year, so I think that's an easy win. What do you think?
I'll go with Oklahoma.
Yeah. All right. Then the next one, October 8th, is the Red River Showdown, Oklahoma and Texas.
Well, the way this is shaping up is I think Oklahoma's better than every team on their schedule, but they're not going to win every game. So we can go through this practice, and I'm going to tell you that Oklahoma's the better team. I haven't really thought about trying to project where they're going to get upset, but that's certainly one spot. So is the Kansas State game.
Right. So you think Oklahoma's more talented than Texas?
Oh, more talented?
Yeah. Do you think Oklahoma's got more talent than Texas?
They're playing. Their players play better than Texas's players.
Yeah.
Are they more talented? We'll know a lot more about Texas, of course, after they play Alabama, and we'll see this. I guess Quinn Ewers is going to win the job. I guess he is.
Okay. All right. Then the next week, they're going to play Kansas. Kansas come up and coming. They done pretty good last year. 4 wins, but beat Texas.
2 wins, but they almost beat Oklahoma.
2 wins. I thought they had 2.
They almost beat Oklahoma.
Yeah. They almost beat West Virginia.
Yeah, they played well down the stretch.
Yeah. So, I don't think they'll beat Oklahoma this year, but they're up and coming. All right, next one. They're on the road to Iowa State. Some fans will tell you can't win at Iowa State.
Well, Iowa State's lost more meaningful, productive players than anybody in the conference. So I'm going to say that Oklahoma's still better.
Yeah, I think Iowa State, they had their chance last year and for some reason just blew it. Next is Baylor at Oklahoma. Baylor's the preseason favorite. Baylor and Oklahoma State picked the number 1, number 2.
Who's picking them 1 and 2?
Most of everybody.
Okay.
I don't know why. I mean, I really don't. I think Baylor's going to take a step back. Oklahoma State's going to be pretty good, but I think Baylor will take a step back.
I'm not saying they're wrong. I just was curious who had come out with preseason prognostications already. But
so I'm just talking about different talking sports figures around the internet.
Yeah.
Not anybody in particular, ESPN or nothing.
Yeah. Again, I'm just going to tell you that Oklahoma is better than all these teams, not by much. I don't think they're better by much. But I would expect that they're going to lose 2 games. That would be my thinking at this point. And who those 2 are going to be? They play Oklahoma State at home, correct?
They play Oklahoma State at Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
But they go on the road to West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
That's their last 2 games, Oklahoma State and West Virginia. One's on the road.
Yeah. So again,
I think their last 3 games is a tough stretch. You got Baylor, Baylor, West Virginia, and Oklahoma State.
I would like to see.
That's a tough stretch. I think they lose one of those.
Yeah, I would like to see somebody run the numbers on home and road, because I don't think it's nearly as substantial as people make it out to be.
Well, West Virginia was undefeated at home last year and undefeated at home in 2020 as well.
Okay.
2019, I think they lost 1 home game. West Virginia's pretty good at home. The 1 home game in they lost 1 home game in 2020, and that was to Oklahoma. 2019, I don't think they lost any at home. I'm not sure offhand, but West Virginia's a pretty good home team. They're terrible on the road in the Big 12. It's just too far to travel. I think it's hard on the players. So anyway, so you're thinking they lose 2 games, 10-2. That's about where I was going to put them to. 10-2. I think Oklahoma State and Baylor will be 1-2 in the Big 12. I think third spot's going to be between West Virginia, Kansas State, and Oklahoma. I think Texas is going to finish 5th or 6th or worse in the conference again.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Sarkisian.
I don't either, and I think that I just see every time I turn around, it seems like a player is calling out a player, or a player is calling out a coach, or a coach is calling out a player.
Yeah,
that tells me there's some culture problems still going on, and I just don't think that they can finish in the top half of the Big 12 again.
Yeah, they need a really strong coach to go in there, and they need to let that coach run his program. And I don't think Sark was the guy, but we'll see.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna let you get to some other callers. I just wanted to see your thoughts on the Oklahoma thing. I know it's not your actual prediction, but 10-2 sounds about right to me as well. So,
okay, Joey.
Yeah, maybe even 9-3.
Sounds good, sir. Appreciate the call.
All right.
Have a good one.
Thank you, sir.
We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Got some more calls coming in here at the Voice of College Football. Yes, the national championship topic is one that I would really like to nail down. So we would like to put together some kind of series that really answers those questions throughout history. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Mark Falconer.
Hey, Falconer. How are you?
I'm doing great, but you'll never answer that question. Not in any way that would appease the fans.
Oh, about the
and I'll tell you why.
Revising national championships?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was at Miami as a student from 88 to 93.
Mm-hmm.
And we always felt we were hated by the press. We always felt we had a chip on our shoulder. Maybe it's true, maybe it wasn't. I think it is. I think Cam would agree. A few other guys would agree. But I think every school feels that way to some degree. Like you said, the 90 team was probably the national championship team, didn't get a shot to play.
No, I said they were the best team. I said I thought that they were the best team. I didn't say that they were the national champion. Those are two different things.
That's true. That's true. Okay. I'll
they lost 2 games. I would in no way say that Miami should win the 1990 championship. No.
Well, and then I was there at the '93 FSU versus Oklahoma game, which FSU won. They got the championship that year. I think Miami could have beat both of those teams, and Miami did beat FSU that year. So my point is this: back in those days, we lamented the AP and coaching polls, right? It was like, oh, these are just guys. Some guys aren't watching the games, blah blah blah. So we've gone to the new system with the football playoff and the divisions. And I guess now we don't have the divisions. That actually might. But unless you have one league like the NFL, and even in the NFL, the Super Bowl champion is maybe not necessarily the best team, but it's the best approximation they can get to. But it's one league. I don't know how you do it with, 5 power conferences and all the other teams. Maybe without having the divisions have to play. So, you can't get a guy from weak division that slips through a division, a conference championship that gets in the playoffs. Maybe we'll see better games. And I love to see the regular season Miami Ohio State games when they would happen from time to time. I didn't like the last national championship game I saw, but other than that, I don't think. I think it's a hard road to try to really go back in time and say this team was better than that team.
That's not what I'm doing. I'm not Falconer. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to judge which teams are better. I'm looking at resumes.
Yeah, but it's beyond. I think isn't it beyond resume though? I mean, I think that was what was beautiful about it. I think the beautiful part back in the day was it was subjective. You had coaches, you had sports writers, some who watched the game, some who didn't, voting, and maybe the votes were right, maybe the votes were wrong, and it created a system where everyone could talk shit for. Sorry, I don't know if you can say that.
No, you're good.
Could support their team one way or the other, through the offseason. As it's getting more professional, and as we've seen this last week with the craziness of Jimbo and Saban, which is the two, really respected guys, top of their game. The fact that those are the two guys that kind of fell off this week is nuts. It just shows that this whole thing is spiraling.
So Falconer, I don't know that a lot of people realize this. Okay, prior to 1998, we solely depended on people voting for a national champion. And I think what gets lost is people take what's going on right now and the resources available to all of us, and they jettison that back to 1970. So today, if you were a responsible sports writer and you were given the responsibility of voting for a national champion, you filled out your 1 through 25 ballot each week. And let's say, in addition to covering, let's say you are in Little Rock, Arkansas, and you've got a vote in the AP poll. You're in Little Rock, Arkansas. You write for the Little Rock Gazette and you cover Arkansas football. Well, you would take your time to research the other teams and the other games, and you would watch their cut down versions on YouTube and all that other business. But I was around these guys for 7 seasons in the SEC. And believe me, see, what people don't realize is these guys have no idea. They know next to nothing about any other teams in the country. It's not like, I'm not shining a spotlight on me, but it's not like me who watches and talks about and gets information on all the teams in the country. I went to games with Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss every week for 7 years, and was around newspaper guys, and that's all they knew. They didn't know one player who played for Penn State or Notre Dame or Michigan, unless it was Rocket Ismail or Tony Rice. Otherwise, unless they were some national super, they had no idea who those teams were, how good they were. And their whole day, they had a difficult job covering their teams that they were assigned to. They were working 70, 80 hours a week covering Mississippi State football. They had no idea. They didn't know how good Tennessee was, let alone teams 1,000 miles away. And they were voting on national championships. And I got to tell you, I lived that life for 7 years from a TV perspective. And just because I was a nut who had a DVR that was rolling on games all day Saturday while I was gone covering Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama, I would watch as much as I could and keep up with the national scene. And because I was from Ohio and a Big Ten guy, I would keep up with everything. Those guys didn't. And their day on Saturday was consumed with covering the Mississippi State Tulane game. And that's what they did. And we're having these guys vote on the national championship. They weren't qualified. They're still not qualified. Not because they're bad people or they don't know anything about football, but they are consumed in a job that is covering one team.
The iPhone didn't come out till 2007. You didn't have YouTube and streaming and these condensed games until what? I mean, really, 2010. I mean, you know, if you wanted to know about Arkansas and you lived in New York, you were a sports writer in New York, you would have called that guy at the Arkansas paper and say, "Hey, what's going on in Arkansas?" Because they didn't know, unless they were on a national. You know, once in a while, they'd get an 8 p.m. game on ABC or something, and that was how the country saw teams outside their zone. Right?
So yeah, when I was doing that in the late 90s, you could watch all those teams. You could watch Ohio State play every week, but I was consumed in the teams I was covering. Now I ran a DVR all day on Saturday again, and I try to catch up with as much as possible. But again, I just know my experience. And again, watching those newspaper guys operate around me, they were even more consumed with just their team. And they were doing their job. That was their job. Their job, the top 25 vote was just kind of that wasn't their job. That was just a little benefit, or some of them considered a burden. And I would be like, give me your top 25 ballot. But I know that if Alabama and LSU played a game at 2:30 in the afternoon Central Time, I'd have to get to the game by 12:30 or 1. I'd have to leave at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. I'd get to the game. They'd play from 2:30 to 6. I'd be in the locker rooms interviewing players, at the news conference of the two coaches. I wouldn't get, then there'd be a 2-hour drive back, and I'd have to rush on highlights and interviews for the 11 o'clock news. I wouldn't get home until midnight. I didn't see any college football the whole day except for Alabama and LSU.
Here's the question. Was that better or worse than what we have today?
Oh, it's worse. We've got a committee that is given the responsibility of keeping track of all the teams and knowing the metrics, and there's a lot more analytics, and we at least get 4 teams together that have basically earned an opportunity to play for a national championship. So for as much as I don't like the playoff system, it's an invitational. It's not a playoff system. We basically have 4 teams that earned the spot to play for a national championship, and they actually play on the field.
I mean, in that way, it's easier to defend it through the metrics, and I agree with you on that. But I think you lose some of the intangibles, some of that, and like you said, a lot of the guys weren't watching the game, so some of those could go to the votes, and those weren't any good anyway. So, but some of those guys could see the game. Well, I don't know. I'm not arguing for one or the other. I think where we are is probably where we should be to some degree. I'm not sure about the committee. The committee bothers me because the people on the committee, I'm like, I mean, some of them I get, some of them I don't get. That's and I don't know. I'd rather see like more guys like you and Herb Street and guys that really know this stuff inside and out. I mean, guys in names I probably don't even know because they're just the numbers guys that are behind the scenes that make the other guys look good. Those guys, rather than Condoleezza Rice. Although I love Condoleezza Rice and she's a football fan, it's great to have her, and I love what it says in a lot of ways. And I don't think she's on that. I don't think she's on that anymore. She was at one point, but it's like I don't know. I don't like committee just in general. I'm sort of a
Well, I agree with you. I don't like the committee either. But if we did have a committee, which I would be honored to be on the committee, but if we had more than 13, if we had like 50, and then you would have a lot of different perspectives and you mix them all together and hopefully you get a great result, because not everybody's going to look at it the way I am. Not everybody's going to look at it the way Joel Klatt looks at it, or fill in the blank. But you put all those perspectives together and everybody kind of learns from everyone, or everybody has to listen to everyone and hear how they view it. If we have to have a committee, I don't think we have to have a committee.
But you can't do like basketball. You can't do a Sweet 16. It's a different game, and it's just too different.
Well, basketball is the same thing as football. They have a committee.
I know. I understand. Yeah, to get into the tournament, but you can't do a 64-team tournament in football. It's just not helpful.
Sure. The reason the committee works in basketball is because they can't screw it up. It's impossible to screw it up because they get 68 spots. So how do you screw it up? Yeah, they screw up some seedings maybe, or where they position some teams, or one regional's tougher than the other one. That's how they screw it up. There's absolutely no way imaginable that you can screw up a 68-team college basketball tournament. Like I don't watch college basketball. I haven't seen a game for 10 years. They could give me all the metrics at the end of the season. I couldn't screw it up. You're going to get the best teams. Sure, you might screw up number 66 and 67 and 68, but who cares? They're not winning the national championship. So you're going to have the top 55 teams there for sure.
Number 70 feels like they got screwed every year.
What's that?
The number 70 team feels like they got screwed every year.
Well, yeah, but they don't matter.
Well, I understand. But you can extrapolate this out to, all right, you take, what is there, 113 teams in Division One? I don't know.
130.
Start from day one, giant playoff. That'd be terrible.
But if you've got a legitimate size playoff, then teams don't have a gripe. You take away the gripe. You take away a legitimate gripe. Right now, we have a legitimate gripe. We are leaving teams out that have as good a resumes as teams that get in. This has happened almost every year.
You don't think there'll be gripes? I mean,
oh, there'll be gripes, but they're not legitimate gripes. Today, you have legitimate gripes because, Falconer, answer me this question. What can any team do to guarantee that they're going to make the playoff?
Don't lose.
Nope, that doesn't guarantee it.
Okay.
UCF.
Win their conference?
No, that doesn't guarantee it. Utah won its conference last year. We had how many conference champions didn't make the playoffs last year? The ACC, the Big 12, the Pac-12. We had 3 conference champions didn't make the playoffs last year. If every conference winner goes undefeated, one of them's going to get left out. So winning every game doesn't get, there is nothing you can do to guarantee that you're going to the playoffs. And there's something wrong with that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true. But you're always going to have, you're always going to have people that have beef. Like, no matter how it's decided, like you, and I've kind of had fun with it over the last year. A year ago, you had a guy arguing his team lost because of this hurt 20 years ago.
and you were remarkable having fun with it. You come up with the you've come up with about 52 variations of the same line, but they're all hilarious.
When I heard that on this, I forget. I don't even remember what the show was. I don't even remember what team it was. Maybe it was Colorado or I don't know.
Yes.
Was it Colorado?
There was bad turf,
Anyway,
and that's why they lost that game.
bad turf. It's bad turf. The refs cheated. The circa 2000 national championship. There's a lot. There's always an argument for fans, which is one thing, and then there's always the metric. So, I know you're more of a metric guy, which is probably the right way to go. Things have proven out that way. I still think the turf is the most important thing. But
You still with us, Falconer? Did I miss something?
sorry,
We're cutting out a little bit. Well, you got
That's
anything
okay.
else
It is
for us?
time to go. I was just going to say, I like the way you use the metric. I mean, people say, or critics of you say you're an OSU fanboy. You're definitely not. You're a metrics guy. You're a numbers guy. You look at the data. I think you look at the turf a little bit more, and on that, I'm gonna leave.
Well, I appreciate it, Falconer. I think we're kind of losing you, so I didn't quite get that, but I think there was a compliment in there about being a metrics guy. Thank you so much for that. I always appreciate the support. You're here for us, and thank you so much for that. I don't get a chance to talk to you much. You can call anytime.
I know. I like to watch and cause trouble.
All right, man. Have a good night. All right. Before we take this next call, man, I can never get to as many comments as I'd like to because I see all sorts of things where people make comments. I'm like, yeah, that needs to be explained. SEC dog here. Heisman voters are the biggest joke in everything. A tennis expert can cast a Heisman vote. It's the ass kissing award. That's all it is. So nothing depicted that to me as much as when I first moved here. So I'm about 2 hours from New York City. When I first moved here, I used to watch this show called Mike and the Mad Dog and listen to this show called Mike and the Mad Dog out of New York, like the most successful radio show, sports radio show in America at the time. And they're in New York City. So what are they talking about? They're talking about the Yankees like 70% of the time. And they're talking about the Mets. They're talking baseball all the time, which at the time I loved. During football season, of course, they're talking a lot of Jets, Giants. Okay, this is little Rangers, little NBA, of course. You take all the professional sports, and that is 99% of what they're talking about. They wouldn't mention college football. There might be a chance that if there was a week one like Notre Dame, Ohio State, that they might say something about it. Just, hey, big game, Mike. Notre Dame, Ohio State. Yeah, that should be a good one. Ohio State missed the playoffs last year. Oh, yeah, we'll be looking out for that one. And then it's off to the Yankees again. They talk college football for the total time of 12 seconds for the entire season until like rivalry week, Thanksgiving weekend. They talked for 10 minutes about it. Those guys didn't even know to the point that they could name the players who were in the Heisman race. They would just say, yeah, that Oklahoma quarterback. Yeah, I've heard some good things about him. And it's like, yeah, that's Baker Mayfield. They don't even know who he is. They might know who a couple of those guys were because there was talk concerning their NFL draft stock. That's why they would know their names. But generally, they would know. Those guys had Heisman votes. They wouldn't even know the names of the top 5 players in the country. They would just know, yeah, that Oklahoma quarterback and the Bama wide receiver, he's a good one. And no idea. And they had Heisman votes. So let that sink in. Before I take this next call, there were some other comments in here that I so much wanted to correct, but I guess I won't get the chance to because I can't find them. So John says, I guess Mark needs more Oklahomas in the playoffs. The sad thing is Mark is smart enough to know the difference between the contenders and pretenders, but still makes arguments for playoff expansion. All right, you're missing the point, John. Doesn't have anything to do. Okay, based on your statement right there, you want us to have a different number of teams in the playoffs every year. You want somebody, I don't know who this is, me, since you say I'm smart enough, that if you force me to do what you want me to do, that I'm smart enough to select the teams that could win a national championship. So now we're dictating based on our thought process, our great knowledge of watching these teams all year. We're going to determine, the fans are going to determine who are the teams that could possibly win a national championship, and they're the only teams that get a chance to play. You know what? I pretty much knew that Michigan was not going to win a national championship this year when the playoffs started. I would have laid a whole lot of money on that. So they weren't supposed to play in the playoffs. We weren't going to let them in because I pretty much knew they weren't going to win the national championship. So what you're telling me, John, is that this season we should have just said Alabama and Georgia are going to play again. Right? And by your system, we're going to change the playoff structure every year. Okay? All right. In 2020, I guess going into the playoff, we knew Alabama was going to win. So based on your criteria, we don't even play a playoff. Just let's give Alabama the trophy. They won it. Okay, no playoff in 2020. Okay, 2019, this is tough because I think anybody who's reasonable about the situation going into 2019, LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, all undefeated. Guess we got a 3-team playoff. How do we do that? Okay. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports Court. How are you doing?
McD. How you been?
Pretty good. I know I haven't been calling in as much, but that's going to change. I had some things going on that I have been taken care of, but I'm happy to call in. The reason why I'm calling in, Mark, is because I just want to express how much I hate the pod system that I hear flowing around with this with the ACC trying to force you to have 3 rivals, the 3-5-5. I know the SEC is also talking about a 4-team pod system once Oklahoma and Texas comes in, with teams grouped up in 4. I know I've seen some of the models of the pods. Can you tell me what does Vanderbilt have in common with Alabama and Auburn?
Vanderbilt?
I know Tennessee is the pod. Yeah, so the one pod system, one of the ones I remember seeing from the SEC is one of the pods would be Alabama and Auburn, and then it was Tennessee and Vanderbilt.
Yeah, what Vanderbilt has in common with those teams is that they've been on a list with them in a conference for 70 years. That's what they have in common. That's pretty much it. They've got a logo at the SEC Media Days along with everybody else. In any SEC event, Vanderbilt gets a logo placed on the board with everybody else, Georgia, Florida, etc. That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Because while listening to the show and everything, because the way I think they should do it is two teams should agree. Like for instance, Alabama, Auburn, they agree to play every year, which they should. The Iron Bowl, obviously, which they should. The only team that going through at least the Power 5 conferences, including the future teams that are going to be in the Power 5, that I could have came up with, the only team I could have came up with that I think is going to have more than 3 rivals is Georgia. I think Georgia will have 4, and that would be Florida, Tennessee, Auburn, and South Carolina. So, in my opinion, I think most teams will have roughly around 2 to 3 rivals. Some teams might have only 1. Some teams might have 0. So, I think that's kind of where that's what I think should happen. Not this whole pod system where, oh, you must play this team every year that has never been your rival because another team in your pod that you're rivals with is also rivals with them. To me, that just makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't think that there has to be the same number of rivals for everyone. I know that makes for an easy formula to build, and that's what they're looking to do, but I would do it differently. I just think that less games need to be protected, and there's a different number of teams that are rivals for everybody.
And that's the point I was trying to make there. Like, for instance, Maryland in the Big Ten, since I'm a Maryland Terps fan. I know it got mentioned earlier that Maryland, Penn State, to me, that's not a rivalry. That's more of a one-sided affair, that Maryland-Penn State matchup, because I think Penn State's 45-5 against us in the history of college football. So as a Maryland fan, I only want to play Rutgers because to me that's really the only real rival in the Big Ten, even though I don't really consider them a rival since we came in the same time and everything. But I don't think that we should be forced to place 3 rivals. Like, I don't even know who our 3rd rival would be if we were forced to do that in the Big Ten, because we're not.
The one thing I will say is that even though I don't consider Maryland and Rutgers to have rivals in the Big Ten, much of that has to do with them being new to the Big Ten. So I would have no issue with them possibly looking to forge a rivalry that makes sense. And like Penn State and Maryland was not necessarily a rivalry. So when we say rivalry, different people take that to different levels. Maryland and Penn State had a long football tradition. They had a series together. All those teams in the East did. You know, Penn State and Syracuse weren't necessarily rivals, but they played every year. Penn State and Boston College, Penn State and West Virginia. I don't consider them to be rivals, but they're in the same region and they played a lot. So just to have somebody to latch Maryland to within the conference and not just have them be some kind of stray team that doesn't really have an attachment or identity, I wouldn't have any issue with them saying, okay, well, we're going to put them together with Penn State because geographically it makes sense and they do have a history.
And that makes sense. I mean, I'm just saying personally as a Maryland fan, I don't view them as a rival. I think our rivals are West Virginia. I know Pitt fans want to say Maryland's a rivalry. I kind of don't view that as a rivalry. But sure, I guess. I mean, that's kind of how I view as the rivals. I guess Navy in state, but Navy's a military school. It's different for military schools. But I just wanted to express that to me, this whole pod system, I think, is not a good idea for college football. And one other point I want to make, Mark, is I want to give you my college football playoff prediction.
Okay.
And you're probably going to disagree with me because I have a bold prediction with it, which I think
okay. Maryland's going to make it, huh?
No. I do think I'll give you my mail-in prediction eventually.
Okay.
But I think your college football playoff will be number 1 Alabama. They go undefeated. I think it's number 2 Ohio State. They go undefeated. Number 3 Georgia. 1 loss Georgia. They lose in the SEC championship game. And then number 4 Michigan. They go 11-1. They lose a close game to Ohio State. And then the 2 teams missing out are number 5 Utah, which is undefeated, and number 6. I mean, to me, number 6. It could be a number of different teams. I'm gonna go with Texas A&M at 10-2.
The SEC and the Big Ten are going to split the playoff. They're going to shut everybody else out.
Yep, and I think Utah goes undefeated, and I still don't think they get in because it's not a playoff; it's an invitational.
Utah is going to be undefeated.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, nice. But Michigan's going to make it in. Well, if they give Ohio State a game and they're undefeated otherwise, I would think that they would get a strong push from the committee.
Mm-hmm. Because it's an invitational and it's not a real playoff. That's why.
Okay.
Utah should be in. They absolutely should, but it's an invitational. And I think this will I think if my scenario plays correct, I think it'll cause an immediate expansion of the playoff. I know they say we'll wait until 2025. I think it'll be expanded in 2023 if this happens.
Well, that would be a brand name playoff, that's for sure. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else, McD?
No, I just want to thank you for taking my call, and go Terps, Big Ten baseball champs. So there's hope for mail-in in the Big Ten, since it's Big Ten champs.
All right. And maybe my bold take this year is going to be that Mike Loxley wins Coach of the Year.
Okay. I mean, I'm not going to hang on to the phone here. Why? You got to tell me. So I'll call back next week, and you have to explain yourself on that.
All right, McD. Have a good one.
You too.
All right. We'll take these calls in just a second. Let's honor our super chat. Appreciate that coming in from Terry. May is a dead month for college football. Well, it certainly used to be. It still is to a certain extent. But when we've got Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban at each other's throats, and we got the transfer portal, and we've got NIL. And what I'm working on right now is I released my top 20 quarterbacks. Many of you saw that. I believe that video did fairly well. And we're going to release our top 10 to 20 at every position if I can get my rear end in gear. So we will do our position rankings, possibly some power rankings throughout the Power 5 conferences. What else? Again, we're going to address these national championships. And Web Security is requesting a national champion decision for each season. But again, it's more for me about determining who earned a claim for a national championship. We don't have teams playing each other in the old days, especially in the playoffs. So you've got teams that are just arbitrarily, and again, not necessarily every year am I criticizing the voters, because if I would have been a voter in 1970, even if I thought, okay, I got 3 teams here, they all went 11-1, and they all have legitimate claims, and they all play tough schedules that are very close to each other, they should be playing, of course. I want one national champion every year, so don't get me wrong. I don't want multiple national championships, but we can't go back in time and have them play, but we can award claimed national championships. We can honor and recognize those schools, those teams that were just as deserving as others. That's what we're doing. So I have no issue in rewriting the record books here at the Voice of College Football. But I would have been just like everybody else. I'm sitting there in 1972 or whatever year. Man, I'm looking at these three teams. Well, I got to put one at 1, one at 2, one at 3, even if I believe that number 3 earned a national championship just as much as number 1. So I'm not blaming the voters all the time. Some of these years they really screwed up. But most of them, they just didn't have enough spots. They could not share the national championship. But to Web Security's request, I may fulfill that request to name my own national champion, which will just be a judgment call. But more so than that, I want to recognize all the teams that earned a national championship. All right. Next up on the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Nick from Alabama. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, Nick. I'm doing all right. What's going on?
Hey, first time, long time.
Nice.
Have a short and sweet one. For you. Wanted to shift gears completely, give you a little bit of trivia. This is my favorite bit of college football trivia, so you let me know when you're ready.
All right, I'm ready.
When I originally heard this question, the number was 12. It may be 13 now with some realignment, but there are 12 FBS/Division I college football teams whose team name /mascot doesn't end in an S. For example, Crimson Tide.
Okay.
I'm going to hang up, see how quick you can get them.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate the call, man. Call back anytime.
All right.
All right. This isn't necessarily my this is not necessarily my my strong suit, but I do know all the nicknames of everyone, so it's just a matter of getting them as quickly as I can. Well, we got the Stanford Cardinal. Oh, we've got I'm, of course, going through the Power 5 teams. And no, I'm not looking at the chat because I know people are going to jump in there. I'm going through the Power 5. I'm not coming up with much, even though I'm not going through every individual team. I'm just kind of glazing through. And most of them are, you know, Tigers and Horned Frogs and etc. So there's not anything there except for the Stanford Cardinal. Okay. American Conference. We got the Tulane Green Wave. We've got the Navy Midshipmen. We have maybe I should go by state. We've got the North Carolina State Wolfpack. Well, he gave me the Crimson Tide, Alabama. We've got that's State. Monroe, Raging Cajun, the Bobcats, the Fighting Illini of Illinois. That's 6. I'm probably going to give up here in about 30 seconds. I'm much better with I'll give you a question that I gave somebody on Twitter today because they brought up a particular NFL quarterback. And I thought of something that they had done that nobody has ever done. Nobody. So there's 6. I think I've gone through the Mountain West. Maybe I haven't. Oh, the Minutemen of UMass. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish. 8. The Syracuse Orange. That's 9. I guess I shouldn't have skipped through the Power 5 so quickly because I'm going back to the Power 5 now. There's 9. There is 9. ECF, USF. Anyway, there's 9. I'll give it a couple more seconds because I think we're losing viewers as we go. I think we've lost 20 people. There we go. And somebody throws in Nevada. There's another wolf pack. There we go. All right. Appreciate that. What I mentioned today was I saw somebody tweet something about Billy Kilmer today. And I asked the question, I said, you just brought up Billy Kilmer. What has Billy Kilmer done that no other quarterback has ever done in Super Bowl play? What has Billy Kilmer done that no other quarterback has ever done in Super Bowl play? Okay. All right. Next call here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? I was impressed that I got 9 out of 12 or whatever it was, because obviously I know them all, but it's just annoying to sit here for that long. All right. Appreciate you being here. Yes, the Mean Green of North Texas. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Porter.
Hey, Porter. What's going on?
Well, you can add the Thunder and Herd to that.
Yes. Think we got them all.
And I think
the Golden Hurricanes right there.
Twice.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, probably the coolest name, if you include hockey, is the Fighting Sioux. That's probably one of the coolest names out there. Anyway,
Fighting Sioux. What is that? South Dakota State?
I think
who was that?
Was that North Dakota State or South Dakota?
North Dakota State.
Okay. I don't know. The damn leftists on the NCAA. I think they may have caused them to change their name.
Yeah, they probably did.
Well, hey, I wasn't going to ask this. It kind of popped in my head when you're talking about. I don't want to get into the whole national championships and all that and debating all these different years, but one thing I've never heard you debate on here, and maybe because there's not a lot of Arkansas fans on the chat, but or there's plenty of Bama, but what is the background on the whole 1964 debate between Arkansas and Alabama? Because Arkansas, I mean, you have these two giant personalities and Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson that will proudly tell you they were the national champion. Then you have Bear Bryant, one of the earliest videos of Bear Bryant, holding up that AP trophy. And anyway, what's the background on that one?
Well, I wasn't quite around. I wasn't quite around there. I just know that Alabama lost a game, I believe, and Arkansas did not. So I recognize Arkansas as the national champion because they both played in major conferences against difficult schedules. But Alabama lost a game, but the AP decided to award them a national championship.
What did you do on yours? Did you award them to both of them?
Nope. Arkansas.
Just Arkansas. Okay, interesting. Well, hey, I know I haven't heard a lot of discussion on the call tonight about maybe it was kind of limited to Thursday and Friday about the whole Saban, Jimbo debate and all that. Let me get back to that because two things on that I want to discuss. Number one of the things I didn't like about it is I feel like Saban elevated A&M to a point where they don't deserve to be elevated. Because A&M had a nice season a couple of years ago, won the Orange Bowl. That's great and all. But I mean, this is a program that hasn't won a conference championship since '98, and because of what Saban did, like I heard some idiot on ESPN say, somebody didn't even really cover college football. They just brought him in to talk about the whole argument. And this idiot said, well, these are just the two best programs in college football going after each. I'm thinking, where did this guy come from?
Yeah.
I mean, just stupid. And I don't know why Saban, granted they beat them last year and they signed a great recruiting class, but I don't know why Saban would want to elevate a program like that by bringing that up. It's almost like you're giving them more credit than they deserve. Because they haven't won a whole lot, so I didn't like that part of it. But any comments on that?
Well, I think that we can only conjecture on what Nick Saban was trying to get to. So one thought is that he's trying to raise money, so he's trying to bring up that and challenge these businessmen, and by extension, anybody who's going to watch this video that has money to say, "Are you going to let Texas A&M out?" collect you for funds for these players because they're buying all their players, or he's just flat out saying Texas A&M's cheating. We need to do something about it. And he's, despite Texas A&M, correct, they're not on Alabama's level at this point. It's not even, I don't want to say it's not close. Athletically, it's close, but they haven't accomplished anything. Nothing. And Alabama's the most accomplished program in the last 15 years. So I think, I can only read into what Saban's trying to accomplish, but if he was trying to accomplish what is the greater good for the sport and enacting changes, then for one of the very few times in his life, he was ineffective because all of that got buried. It was stated, he stated, this is a system, a model that can't be sustained. This is the situation the NCAA is in. We need to help them in some type of way to protect them against litigation, A, B, and C. These are the issues. Let's do something about it. But he should have known what's going to get buried is his attacks on Texas A&M. Or he may just wanted to call out Texas A&M to say, we need to look into Texas A&M because they are cheating. There's money being made available for all these players, but we're doing it the right way. They're not doing it the right way.
Well, let me. I totally agree with what you're saying, but let me take a more, more of a, I guess, societal look at this. And the reason why I'm going this way is that discussion you had a 3 weeks ago with that guy from Michigan about the demographic change in the country and all that. That was really interesting. That was a fantastic discussion about the challenges of the Big Ten and the Rust Belt and all that. I love that kind of stuff. These type of societal, migration within the country is very fascinating. But what do you think about the take I'm going to have in that? I wonder if Saban realizes he doesn't have an advantage because, quite frankly, he is located in a poor state. There is only one Fortune 500 company located in the state of Alabama. That's Regions Bank. And as you know anything about the banking industry, they could easily be gobbled up by somebody else. So they'd be left with not a single Fortune 500 company. Just across Chattahoochee, where I live, in the great state of Georgia, we have 19 Fortune 500 companies located here. You look at what the state of Texas is doing. You look at what Florida's doing. You look at California. What do you think about that? That maybe he's looking at, there's only so much blood you can get out of a turnip. And I wonder if he's just thinking there going, I'm in a terrible position right here. because we don't have the money these other states have. What's your take on that?
Oh, I think that's so if you have time, we had some great conversations about this. We talked about this endlessly for a couple days. So we have all sorts of content, live streams and otherwise about this. And certainly, yeah, that is one take. Texas and Texas A&M are killing it right now because of the resources they have in the state. And Alabama, even though it's an extremely popular program by the masses, you spelled out the difference there. So, yeah, he may, based on survival instincts, want to correct the system to make it more equitable. Sure. And he's pointing that out.
Well, I just, I don't know. There's been a lot of speculation the last 48, 72 hours about, is he on his way out? And I guess for the first time in a while, I'm starting to entertain those ideas. It may be, he may be on his way out. I'd say in the next 2 to 3 years, based on this and the fact that he's 70 years old.
And before you continue, yeah, this might be the one thing that nobody really foresaw. We all foresaw Nick Saban's going to retire because either he just gets to a landing spot in terms of his age where he just doesn't feel like doing it anymore, and he's just not up to it physically, mentally, not mentally that he's not capable, but he just doesn't want to extract that much out of his brain every day to continue to be that focused on this, or that that he'll get to a point where he'll be like, okay, I can kind of see where this was a great season. This is another championship, and I don't want to climb this mountain again. Boom, finish on a great note, national championship. I'm out the door finally. But yeah, we didn't foresee that this could possibly be it. There are other changes to the game on the field that he has not liked, but he's adapted to. But this is something out of his control. He can control, okay, football's going in a direction that I don't like, a bunch of 49-42 games, but I can adapt to that. We just change football on the field. Here, it's largely out of his control, and he might be like, you know what, I don't want to run this race. That might. You've got a good point. That might be the thing that drives him out of the sport.
Well, too, and again, he, all things considered, I mean, the guy looks great. I mean, he doesn't look like a 70-year-old.
Sure.
But when you consider that the last time Bobby Bowden played for a national championship and won it in 1999, he was 70 years old. Did he ever play for another national championship after 99?
2000.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, he played for it. Yeah, but it wasn't really. Yeah, it wasn't a close game. Oklahoma kind of had their way with them. So, I guess you're right. Yeah, he did play. But anyway, my point is that was his last national championship. He was 70 years old.
Sure.
I mean, are you aware of any coach that has won a national championship older than 70?
No, if you look at the black and white pictures, I think that people just looked older. They aged, but it's surprising to see Bear Bryant, Woody Hayes, whoever you want to put in there. And, they just look like, based on the way guys and Nick Saban in particular take care of themselves today, you look at these pictures and you think, or this film, and you think, oh, that dude must be 70. No, he's 58. No. I might be wrong. I might be missing somebody, but I can't imagine that I'm missing anybody. Bear Bryant, of course, won the national championship in 79, but he wasn't quite that old.
Yeah, I don't think he was either.
I'll look him up, but he died in 82, and I'm guessing he was in his mid-70s at the time. Yeah. So Bear Bryant was born in 13, so he was 66 when he won his last national championship.
Okay, yeah. And then I guess Saban was 68 or 9.
Yeah.
In 2020. So, but yeah, I mean, this I'll just say this. I mean, I know I'm a Georgia alum and fan, but I mean, the guy, for Jimbo to say something stupid like he did the other day about, he may not be the greatest or I mean, he's the greatest. I mean, there's no way. I don't care. I don't care what you say. And I believe you, I would love to say he wasn't, but I got to be honest. And I mean, he is the greatest. And so I mean, he's the John Wooden of college football. So I don't know. I thought it was kind of cheap of Jimbo. Yeah, the whole thing I thought was just ridiculous. But anyway, exciting week, and appreciate you giving us a forum to talk about it.
Hey, well, thanks for the call.
I'm sorry. I'm saying it was an interesting week, not an exciting week. Interesting week. So, but,
yes, it was. Well, have a good night.
Thanks. Bye.
Appreciate it. Well, I'll say this. There's no question that I think most people would agree that Nick Saban presents himself better than Jimbo Fisher. I made this statement at one point during one of the live streams this week in response to this situation and this back and forth, that Nick Saban is poised. He presents himself a certain way. Jimbo Fisher is more of a hothead. He's got the arms flailing, and he calls names, and he just doesn't present himself as well as Nick Saban. That doesn't mean that Nick Saban's right and Jimbo Fisher's wrong, but Nick Saban is most likely, because of his credibility, that's both real and perceived, and much of that's on the football field. So his credibility comes from what he achieves on the football field. It's not because he's a man of great integrity and character. I'm not saying that he's not a man of character and integrity, but he's not the Pope. I shouldn't even say the Pope. That was a bad example. He's not built his reputation on feeding the poor and doing good in society. He's built his reputation on being a football coach. And we somehow kind of move that across spectrums into, well, this guy's has character and integrity. No, he's got football credibility. I'm not saying that he doesn't have credibility in terms of character, but I don't make that transition. It's almost like celebrity endorsements. For some reason, people listen to celebrities about social issues. How does that make any sense in the world? That doesn't mean there aren't celebrities or actors and actresses that have a lot of investment in smart things to say. Yes, individually, there's some of them do, but just because you can act doesn't mean you know a lot about politics or social issues. They're completely unrelated. Because you can act, you can save the world. I never understood that, and people actually listen to those people. It's idiotic. So the same thing here. Just because Nick Saban has credibility as a football coach doesn't mean he has character and integrity. So he presents himself better than Jimbo Fisher, and so most people are going to necessarily believe Nick Saban, or there are people out there that just say, you're a great football coach, you're amazing, so we're just going to kind of give it up to you. I don't know who's telling the truth, but somebody's got to be lying. If Nick Saban, if his words are speaking to cheating, he's backpedaled from that. So if we're going to be fair in our judgment here, we're also going to hold Nick Saban accountable for not necessarily being clear, or maybe stepping out further than he wanted to, and now he's backpedaling. And let's understand, for as hot-headed, emotional, kind of can't think of a good word for it. Jimbo Fisher's kind of all over the place. He's not the best at presenting himself in a logical, measured way. You can't follow Jimbo Fisher from point A to B to C. He can't lay out an argument. That's just not his strength. He's kind of all over the place, and you got to kind of piece it together and say, oh, this is what he's talking about. Regardless of all that, he's not the guy that initiated this. He's merely defending himself. So he didn't start it. And so he has every right to say, you know what? I don't like what was said about me and my program and my coaches, so I'm going to debate it. I'm not saying he's right. I'm not saying he doesn't cheat. I'm just saying he has the right to defend himself, of course, and he didn't start it. All right, let's get to this next call here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, how's it going, Mark? This is Explorer Ben.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Not much. I'm trying to type something and it is not working. Not for you in the chat, but I just want to call in. Tim was giving me crap because apparently I don't ever call in.
No, you don't. You can call anytime, you know that.
I do. I know. I do call in occasionally, but I just had to put the note out that we need 22 more hours of a live call-in show. So might be a long night for you.
Do we have a host for that? Oh, a long night for me. Okay. Yeah.
Well, oh, Mark, we had a conversation. I'll pick up slack for you. There are several that will pick up slack for you in those areas.
We're going to do that in 15 weeks, you know. We're only 15 weeks away from.
It might not be the greatest show in the world, but we'll try.
We're going to be here for 24 straight hours in 15 weeks to kick off the season. We are doing that.
Well, but Falconer asked for 48 hours because he wants church talk, you know.
48 hours. Good Lord. I might as well just stay on for the weekend. We've got Thursday. Well, that opening weekend, we go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We've got games for what, 5 consecutive days? That is? Yeah, let's just stay up the entire time.
And there we go. There's your 48 hours, and we can get some turf talk in there for Falconer.
It's more than
I don't know
that.
if he's on tonight. I haven't seen him. But...
Oh, yeah, he called.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. I might have been on the phone with Sam. Sam is creeping in the chat also. He wanted to call and ask you about Sam Houston State football, but they don't know what their mascot is. It's a Bearcat, but also a tiger. So they're a little confused.
It's kind of like Auburn. They're confused too. It's a tiger. It's an eagle.
That's a great comparison. You know, I kind of thought about that before, but I've never really compared it to it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're the Auburn Tigers, but we say War Eagle. And I know there's an explanation for it, but still.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, it's funny. It's funnier because I've only looked at Sam Houston State because, of course, they just won the 2020 national championship for SBS level. And I actually just went to a graduation there on campus in Sam Houston. The stadium's not as bad as it actually looks or everyone talks about. They've actually upgraded it. But, yeah, you see the logo. It's a tiger, but they say Bearcat. So it is actually more confusing.
I got nothing for you.
Yeah, well, we got to get that SDS talk in, Mark. I know you talked about this before. We could go on forever about this, and you'd be like, I have no idea what to talk about with this. But, just bring it up.
All right, man.
Well, I'm not gonna take any of your time, Mark, because Tim was just saying I don't ever call in, so I was gonna call in and be like, "Yep, see, I had nothing much to talk about."
It's great to hear from you. And when I go with Exploring with Ben and Sam, I want you to always remember my my apology for not always, just kind of shortening the title many times.
Oh, it's no offense to me. I'm the Ben. Everyone asks that all the time. Trust me, I've had streams with people, and they're like, "Are you Ben or Sam?" So.
Absolutely.
So, all right, Mark, you have a good one, and we're looking for the next 21 hours.
Yes, absolutely.
Hopefully.
We are. Have a good night. We'll see you.
All right.
Appreciate it. All right. I am putting right now in the comments section. We did an interview yesterday. Nobody's watching it, but we did an interview with Washington State head coach Jake Dickert and it was pretty exceptional. He was a great guy. He told me that I can contact him anytime, which I will before any big Washington State games. They've got Wisconsin, and then any of their games in the Pac-12 that are meaningful, we will look him up and hopefully get him back on. But great interview with our guy, Washington State head coach Jake Dickert. So check out that interview. I just put the link in the chat here. Yes, we're going to attack national championships throughout history. And I don't think I'm going to go year by year, because I just know that if I title a video 1948 national championship review, revised championship, or something like that, people aren't going to watch it. I just know. I wish I could do that. I could just go year by year by year by year by year. What I'm going to have to do is, my first video is going to be something like taking away Alabama national championships. Whether I'm not, you'll just have to see. Don't be surprised if they have less or more, or we'll see. Well, I know what the outcome is, but yeah, I'm just going to have to maybe review the big schools and then take requests, something like that. Auburn, I think, certainly can benefit from this system. So we will do that. Thank you, Exploring with Ben and Sam. Good interview. Yeah, he was a great guy. Jake Dickert at Washington State. I sent out, I used to do this when I had like 100 subs. I would send out a form letter to every sports information director in the country to try to get an interview with their head coach. Well, I just started doing that again, even though, hey, based on the response from this first video, even though I'm interviewing the Washington State head coach. So I mentioned this to the Wholesome one off air, and he's like blown away. You got an interview with a Power 5 coach? I'm like, yeah. He's like, the head coach. I said, yeah. He's like, oh man, that's phenomenal. Well, if nobody watches it, it takes a lot of time to get through these sports information departments and have them get back to you, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Set up a time with the coach. He's got 15 minutes. You got to fit it right in. So it's probably not worth the effort, but I made it anyway. Nick, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Appreciate that so much. You got all of them, Mark. Don't know what that is, but I appreciate that. Caller Nick from Alabama. Let's take these two calls for sure, and then we will shut down the lines. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who are we talking to?
Hello, Mark. It's the real MVP. How
there
you doing?
Is. I'm doing well. What's going on, man?
Well, I saw that interview you had with the Washington State football coach, and first off, credit to Washington State and for Jake for doing it. Second, is there anything you got from the interview that surprised you?
Well, he was very upfront. He was very open. I've done about 12 or 15, well, more than that, because I used to go to the American Conference Media Days. I went about 3 or 4 straight years, talked to all those coaches. So I've done more than that. I've probably done like 20 or 25 of these coaches, and they've all been pretty good. But he was noticeably energetic, enthusiastic, wanted to talk. Not really. I guess what I did not get out of him that I wanted to, and it was my first question. So if anybody's familiar out there, their head coach there at Washington State, Nick Rolovich, would not take the vaccine. He got fired mid-season, took 6 coaches with him who apparently would not get the vaccine either. So Washington State wipes them out. We're talking right in the middle of the season, and bam, you take your defensive coordinator. And we're not talking about Brent Venables, defensive coordinator that's been there for 12 or 13 years. We're talking about a guy that just started that year. And boom, your defensive coordinator in the middle of the week. Boom, you're the head coach. Go. So I wanted just to hear what that was like, which he explained that. But of course, he's going to give the credit to the players and the other coaches and all of that.
Okay, and did you see that Tennessee, they canceled their last part of their home and home series with BYU?
Yes.
What do you think about that? Because I think that's cowardice move to not try to get a revenge game in there.
A revenge. Well, yeah, they lost that game a couple of years ago. Well, I don't know the details necessarily of who canceled it, though. I'm guessing that BYU canceled it because they're joining the Big 12.
Well, from what the articles I've read and the videos I watched, it seemed like Tennessee canceled it because they were the ones who paid the $2 million fine to BYU for canceling the game.
I wonder why.
Well, maybe they didn't want to lose 2 games in a row to BYU.
I don't think that has anything to do with it. I really don't.
Well,
think that
I mean,
has
they
anything to
canceled
do
a
with
game
it.
against Army to play Ball State. It's starting to develop a pattern.
I just can't imagine Tennessee's dodging BYU. They're playing Pitt. They played Pitt last year. They lost. They're playing them again this year. They didn't cancel that game.
No, they did cancel one against Army and BYU, though. Both, legit teams, decent teams.
Yeah, but they scheduled against Virginia. They picked up Virginia in place of that. Now, do we know who's going to be better in a couple of years, Virginia or BYU? I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between those two.
Well, I would be almost shocked that if BYU isn't ranked more in the top 25 than Virginia.
I don't think there's
might be going way out on a limb there.
I don't think there's a lot of difference there. It's not like they dropped Oklahoma and picked up Cal. I just don't think it's a big deal. I don't think Tennessee's dodging BYU. I got to think that if we look at Tennessee's future schedules, that they're playing some really good teams. They just.
Well, yeah, they're in the SEC. They're automatically
no. I'm talking about out of conference. Let's see, where are their future? They've got to have future opponents listed here somewhere. There we go. They've got Oklahoma in 24, Syracuse, Nebraska, Washington, West Virginia, Washington. They're not world beaters, except for Oklahoma, but good programs, decent.
Yeah. Decent. I mean, I give them some credit, I guess.
When was this BYU game?
2023.
All right. Okay. So I don't know. They were able to schedule Virginia, and they lost BYU, and their other games are the likes of Austin P, Texas San Antonio, and UConn. And now, of course, I'm going to get a lot of comments in the chat, like from Mike 3883, BYU's better than Virginia. I get it. I'm not saying that they're not better than Virginia. I'm just saying it's not. We're not talking about Ohio State and Rutgers here. It's not that substantial. But we recognize that BYU lost them to UAB in a bowl game last year. I'm thinking that Virginia's
there was a bad call that influenced that game, though.
Sure,
so a horrendous call.
They were still in a difficult game with UAB in a bowl game.
That's fair.
Anyway, so this Virginia game looks like it's more. Why probably they canceled this is because of money considerations. So they are paying $2 million. I got you.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to go to BYU because they lost to BYU at home. So they were going to BYU, and they replaced that with a game in Nashville. So it's basically like a home game against Virginia in the NFL stadium.
Neutral site game.
Yeah, it's technically a neutral site game. But it's like Georgia, Oregon. They're kind of the home team, but it's a neutral site technically, and they're in an NFL stadium, and they thought it was worth giving up $2 million. Okay. I'm not going to go crazy about that.
Okay. Well, my final thing I'll ask is there's a lot of people that have not completely, but have kind of sold their Nick Saban stock, as in he's done, he's frustrated, he's upset. Did you see the Miami booster today?
No.
What he said? Well, he basically called Nick Saban. He was acting like a teenager because he's not getting his way. He's losing his grip and power and all that stuff. And I just can't see that perspective. I mean, he still coaches Alabama. He's still got the second best recruiting class. He's still the favorite to win the national title this year.
Yeah.
I just don't understand that perspective.
Yeah. Who was this clown?
Some billionaire booster for Miami, because Nick Saban in his comments mentioned a basketball player from Miami that got paid allegedly $400,000.
Yeah. If Nick Saban's stock is down, it's down, from record-setting levels, and it's down 0.03%. It's Apple's stock that has been rising and taking off for 30 years that took a little dip one day. He had a little exchange with Jimbo Fisher. Maybe he said a few things that he would have rather not said exactly the way he said them, but he's Nick Saban. You said it all when you said his off recruiting class is number 2 in the country. He lost the national championship game that he was winning with 4 minutes left. This is as bad as it gets with Nick Saban. Oh, we lost the national championship game. Oh, we've got the number 2 recruiting class. Yeah, that's the floor. Pretty much the floor.
Now, an interesting perspective I did hear was that Nick Saban, if he's solely in it for the money, he might retire because Tom Brady got this enormous deal with Fox, and Tom Brady's going to make more money announcing games than he ever did playing in the NFL. If Nick Saban did that, I feel like, he would get that type of money as well.
You guys are all over this stuff. I don't look this stuff up. So Tom Brady, I'm looking it up right now. This happened about 2 weeks ago. Tom Brady gets a monster 10-year. So is this contingent upon whenever he retires, that deal kicks in?
Yeah.
Okay. I might be wrong, but based on interviews and so forth, I'm not understanding why Tom Brady's going to be a great football analyst. Maybe he will. I don't know. I shouldn't say. He's obviously got the mind for it. He knows as much or more than anybody, and he can explain it. He's a smart guy. Okay, fine. Just these announcers that get all this money, it's like Herb Street and the Herb Street part of it was the one that got the headlines with Amazon. I don't think people choose to watch games because of announcers. It's nice when you can get a good announcing team. I like to hear the better announcers do games rather than some that kind of, I got to roll my eyes and just kind of go with it. Sure. But that doesn't in any way impact whether I'm going to watch a game or not. So it's kind of interesting to see that these networks are willing to shell out this kind of money for something that I don't think is going to pay off.
You don't think more people are going to watch Fox Sports coverage for Fox games because Tom Brady's in the booth?
I won't. But of course, I'm just one person, and I'm typically an outlier. I'm not the typical fan, apparently, because I don't care about these kind of things. But yeah, I think he's going to bring more eyeballs week 1, week 2. And then it's going to settle into whatever people want to watch. If he's just in the announce booth for the games, people are still ultimately just going to watch whatever games they want to watch. They're not going to be like, I'm going to watch this, this Patriots Bills game, and they're both 5-5 over this Cowboys Giants game. They're both 9-1 because Tom Brady's doing the game. And these networks, they know what they're doing. They kind of know what they're doing. We just know that CNN just started an app that bombed and they blew like $1 billion on it. So they don't always make the smartest decisions.
Well, hopefully Tom Brady's announcing career will last longer than CNN Plus. Hopefully. That would be a complete disaster.
I'm sure it will. And like I say,
Well,
I guess he doesn't come across to me as like this dynamic kind of guy. But then again, Peyton Manning, he has certainly been able to forge a very profitable and interesting, I guess you'll call it a broadcasting career, basically a career as a celebrity into something that's really fun and interesting, with all the commercials and the Manning brothers thing, whatever they call it on ESPN, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, the Manning cast?
Yes.
ESPN's doing something similar with Joe Buck and forget the other guy with the PGA Tour.
Jim Nance?
Joe Buck. And not Jim Nance. I forget the other. It was Michael something.
Well, you said somebody with a PGA Tour.
Yeah, Joe Buck and Michael, I forget his name.
An actual
they were
golfer?
Doing something like. No, I don't think it was a golfer. They were doing the thing where they would interview players while the golf was going on.
Oh, okay. Well,
kind of like in the Manning cast where they interview players and celebrities and stuff while the football game's going on.
Gotcha. Well, I certainly, it's funny when you mention Joe Buck, just because I've got nothing against Joe Buck. I think he's good at what he does. I'm not a huge fan, but I'm okay with him. I don't know if there's a more unliked person in sports than Joe Buck. It seems like anytime Joe Buck's brought up, most people are commenting how much they can't stand him.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty and the curse of announcing. But Mark, that's all I got for you tonight.
All right.
So I guess I will see you next time.
All right, man. Appreciate it. We'll take these 2 calls right here. Uncle Rico, am I confused? I guess that's being confused. I just don't know what Joe Buck's going to be doing. If that's being confused, yeah, I just hadn't heard what he's going to be involved in. And it sounds like either he's got some golf guy on with him. I have no idea what it is. This is the first I've heard of this. I think when we have these kind of conversations, you guys realize how much I stay away from that kind of stuff. Like, I didn't even know that Tom Brady signed it. And I'm on Twitter, man. I get on Twitter. I don't want to be on Twitter, but I got to get on there. And then I get sucked into some conversations and if you would check my Twitter replies, you would see me lash out at some people from time to time, but it's typically not about, well, it's probably about sports 3/4 of the time. Yeah, I had no idea that Tom Brady signed anything and was doing anything there. Oh, Aikman and Buck are doing the games at ESPN. Yes, I'm aware of that. But yeah, Joe Buck does not move the needle for me either way. Like, I think he's very good at what he does, but I don't think he's like the best I've ever heard. He doesn't annoy me. He's fine. He's okay. I'm okay with him. He's got rapport with Aikman. I think Aikman's exceptional, except for he has a certain way of describing things that annoys me because it takes him longer than it should. He likes to use the term he's able to do something. Like, I can't explain it until I would hear it, and then I would be able to tell you exactly. It takes, instead of saying Aikman, instead of him saying that Aaron Rodgers, boom, did that, can do that, he has this always put in the terms he is able to do. I probably lost everyone on that, but believe me, Troy Aikman takes way too long to build a sentence than he should. But otherwise, he's great. He knows what he's talking about and all of that. He's amazing. And yes, Ferris, there you go. Yeah, some of those conversations are about my guy EP, but they're about all sorts of things. But I get on Twitter and I miss the Tom Brady news. And with some of those things, I take a little pride in knowing that I'm going to take 2 more calls. I take a little pride in knowing that, I've separated myself from some of these things, and that's actually a good feeling Like I actually respect some people who don't know who celebrities are, for example, because I think, you know what? You're letting me know and everyone else that you actually have better things to do than know what this is or that is or who that is. All right. Our penultimate call of the night. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Wow, J-Dub gets to be the penultimate guy tonight. How about that?
That is you, J-Dub.
Yeah, I tell you, let's keep it in the Buck family. I grew up in the mid-'70s in the middle of Illinois. And so our AM radio in the backyard was Dad and the sunscreen and something cool to drink and our feet in the pool was Joe Buck, Daddy, Jack Buck, on KMOX radio calling the Cardinal games, and Jack Brickhouse on WGN radio calling the Cubs games. And Joe Buck is no Jack Buck. He's not even anybody who remembers listening to his father. He's not even a shadow of his father. He's not even close. And I don't really particularly have anything against Joe Buck. I just think there's just a gigantic gap between father and son, an enormous gap. The announcer who drives me crazy is Chris Collinsworthless on Sunday Night Football. I almost can't watch Sunday Night Football as much as I like Al Michaels.
I like Collinsworth.
Chris Collinsworthless. I can't stand him.
Yeah.
I can't stand him. He brings
I like him.
all he does is read the cards that's handed to him and go off the earpiece in his ear. Guy makes a play, and then he spends 30 seconds talking about that guy. Oh, that Sam Walton, that boy. That Dave Smith. And then he's never brought him up until the guy makes a play. He's a reactor. He never says anything before it happens. He's not Tony Romo. Tony Romo is a color guy that'll tell you what's about to happen, and then it does. Chris Collinsworth is completely incapable of that. He's a total reaction.
Oh,
and
that's not necessarily my take. I've heard a lot out of Collinsworth. That's great insight into the game. Tony Romo, I was impressed with from the start. I got to admit, he's starting to wear on me a little bit because he's not the best communicator in the world. And I was like everybody else, surprised out of the gate how good he was and how, of course, he knows the game. He knows the game. He's got great knowledge and insight, but he's starting to, again, I just don't think he's a great communicator. So he's starting to wear on me a little bit because he's like all over the place sometimes.
Well, I like you, I didn't know the Tom Brady news and could really care less one way or the other. I was kind of hoping Brady would retire and do his best to disappear so I never had to hear about him ever again. It'll be annoying if he's on the national scene for 10 more years on TV. But I can't think of any time I've ever said, you know what, I'm going to watch this game because this guy's calling it.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to watch this game because this guy's calling it.
Me too.
Except if Beth Mallins is calling a game, I either have to have the mute. I either have to have the mute on, or I just can't watch it.
Well,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but Beth Mallins. There are local guys doing high school radio in Iowa who are more talented than she is.
Yeah. Well, I find it difficult to be in this position.
I know you can't say anything. I know you're.
Well,
I know you're kind of trapped.
No, I'm not trapped, but it would be nice someday if I had these people on here on a regular basis to just have that notoriety and have those great discussions with those kind of people. So I don't want to be critical of them and just bash people left and right, because people could bash me and they do. So, I'm a target as well. Like Mark said this, Mark's horrible. Mark's got an irritating voice. Mark's got this or that, or they could say whatever they want about me as well. So, but I have my personal opinion. So, again, I will try to be reserved, but I should give my opinion. Yeah. Beth Mowens, I don't I don't think is very good. Like you, sometimes I scratch my head and think, not just with her, with other people, and think, my goodness, there are local guys that are calling minor league baseball somewhere that are much better than them. I don't get it. People like Gus Johnson. A bunch of people mentioned here Gus Johnson. I guess it depends on the day. I get the admiration for him because of the excitement. He's got great pipes and all that. Like Cheryl just mentioned, Gus Johnson, about 5 other people. Gus is the best. After a while, it kind of irritates me. And he also, there are many times in which he asks questions of Joel Klatt that makes me think, is he asking this for the viewer, or does he seriously, after watching as much football as he has, doesn't understand that, doesn't know that? Like, sometimes I honestly believe he doesn't know that about the game of football.
And I wonder if Joe Klatt is just standing there next to him going, "Oh my God, I can't believe you just asked me that." you know.
But there's more people in here mentioning Gus Johnson. How great he is. I know my son liked him when he used to watch college football. He'd be like, I like this guy. He didn't even know who he was.
Well, it's the excitement thing. Some guys want, just call the game. Just call the game. Remember, you can remember, you're of my age group, Frank Gifford, when Frank Gifford did the play-by-play for Monday Night Football forever. He was just right down the middle of the road. Didn't get excited, didn't get unexcited. He just called the game, soothing voice. He had a great voice, great play-by-play voice. Just called, like Al Michaels, just kind of called the game, and you just felt like you were just, you didn't react to him. He was almost like you didn't notice him. You know what I mean? So good enough that he wasn't noticed. Gus Johnson, you're going to notice. Whether you like it or not, you're going to know he's there. I've got, you go back, a perfect example. I have saved a YouTube clip of the 2017 Devontae Smith catch in overtime that won the Natty for Bama. And I have it's got Eli Gold's radio call for Alabama. It's got the Georgia Radio Network. It's got ESPN TV, ESPN Deportes. It's got Russian TV. There's like 8 different people calling the exact same play. And the one I like the most is Jim McKay's son, Sean McCannis, his call of the game, where he actually kind of lost his voice a little bit during the call. So, everybody's going to have their favorites, but I have to real quick go back to, you had a caller talking about the Bearcats and something like Sam Houston State. He was wondering about their mascot.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought up Auburn with the what are they, the war chicken, rubber chicken, striped, whatever they are. I remember when I was a student at Alabama, and one of the Golden Eagles that they used which is a really cool thing, to fly down the midfield at their home games, had to retire. Got to the age where it couldn't perform anymore, and so they had to bring in, train a new one in. And I believe this is either the 86 or the 87 season. It caught the Raptor handlers by surprise and they didn't have a new one trained yet. So there was going to be like 2 games before they could get it trained, the new one trained. And I believe they call their Eagle Goldie. If there's Auburn fans in here, first of all, I'm sorry. Second of all, I think it is called Goldie. But anyway, so the Crimson White, which is the student newspaper at Alabama, ran a front page story about this, that, Auburn was missing their Eagle mascot, and they were going to change, a long tradition of Jordan hair, which is spelled one way and pronounced another. And what would they do? What would they do for those 2 weeks? And apparently the crack staff at the Crimson White had uncovered that Auburn was going to have the ball run onto the field by a zebra, who would run onto the field at the 50-yard line and deliver the game ball. And it just is a temporary mascot. And so the Birmingham Zoo had arranged for this zebra to do it. And they had taken a student poll at the university, and they decided that they would name the zebra Spot. They ran that as a front-page story in the student newspaper, Alabama. And Auburn's response was they were a little aggravated, shall we say. So, having fun with Auburn's double, triple, quadruple mascots is there's a long history involved there.
Well, as somebody in the chat
I'm
said,
sure there's some. What's that?
Somebody mentioned in the chat the hate is real.
Oh yeah, there is no greater hate than between. I know this. Ohio State fans will talk about the team up north and they won't use the M, and I know I'm not going to buy gas, and that's I understand and I appreciate that, and I think Ohio State Michigan is a fabulous rivalry, and I love the tradition of Harvard Yale, love the tradition of Army Navy, but when it comes to just absolute hatred, when it comes to hate, literally, true hate. There isn't anything like Alabama Auburn. It's at another level. And even if you're not an SEC fan or you don't give a hoot about either one of those schools, I encourage you to go through the state of Alabama one time, and you'll see that there'll be bumper stickers on gas stations. You have a gas station that'll have a big poster in their doorway with the Auburn football schedule on it, and they'll use a magic marker, write in the scores or whatever. The gas pumps will have War Eagle bumper stickers on it or whatever. Alabama fans won't do business there.
Yep. They'll
go down the street. They'll go to the gas station down the street and go to the one that's got the Alabama thing. This is a real thing. It's real. There may not be, and thank God there's not, the stupid racial segregation in the state of Alabama like there used to be, but there's still very much the Auburn-Alabama segregation. But that's what's so great about college sports. Washington State, USC, UCLA, Pitt, West Virginia. We've all got our wars, and that's what makes it so entertaining.
Absolutely, J-Dub. Well, I appreciate you stopping by tonight.
Hey, thanks for the call.
Thank you, J-Dub.
Yeah, thanks as always for hosting. Hey, everybody! Again, we say it all the time. The Amazon.com thing. Come on, help the guy out. Help Mark out. It's not costing you anything, and it helps Mark. And it doesn't cost you anything to hit that thumbs up button, and it helps Mark too. If you're already here and you're already doing this, go ahead and do that too. Thanks, Mark.
J-Dub, appreciate it. Have a good night. All right. Before we get to this last call, I'm going to say something that I say from time to time that prompts me to say, I'm going to do this, this, and that, and then I won't do it. But tonight's conversation in the chat about great announcing teams makes me think that once we get into the college football season, because I know I'll forget 80% of them, because most of the play-by-play teams that I think are the best aren't the ones that are well known. Now, I've got great respect for Joel Klatt, as much respect for him as any media person doing football right now. But the best play-by-play teams, according in my estimation, are not the well-known ones. I usually don't think that they're the best, the ones that are the most known. And I do not think that Gus Johnson is one of the best producers as a play-by-play guy. I hear guys that are much more fluid and at just a higher skill level in terms of weaving in and out of stories and storylines and narratives. He just flat out asks questions of Joel Klatt, which is fine. But I do honestly think, and I might be fooled by this, I know what you guys are talking about when Gus Johnson basically says, Joel, explain what you just said about cover 2 to the audience. I understand what he's doing there. There's other times, though, that he says some things that Joel Klatt has to kind of cut in and say, no. That kind of surprised me out of a guy that's seen that much football. All right, last call of the night here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Mark. Good evening.
Lomansky, what's going on?
How's your eyelids?
You probably can't see him with the glare of the glasses. Yeah, I've had them closed for about 45 minutes. Yeah, these shows, we need to go on a 2-hour show limit is what we probably should do in the future.
Well, I'm gonna go a different angle since you kind of covered this play-by-play thing. I want to compliment you on your Washington State interview. And he was a good listen to, and of course I'm really interested in coaches, and might call in again someday about that. It's been over talked about the Alabama and Texas A&M coach go back and forth. I think they're both a little bit irresponsible. We had a great opportunity to talk about fixing college football and what I know they both care about, and yet they started slinging mud back and forth. And I'm going to jump to your program that was so good about the Washington State coach, because, I live in the Midwest in Iowa, Wisconsin most of my life. And you learn about other parts of the country and other programs. You know a lot about where you worked in your history, about the East Coast. You're an Ohio State fan, so I relate to a lot of your Ohio State stuff. Who's your favorite color guy, since you mentioned announcers and play-by-play guys, and you're pointing at Brock Heward, I think.
Well, I am pointing to Brock Heward, not that he's my favorite, but he's high on the list. And I know that I mentioned that a lot of the B and C announced teams are the ones that I actually think are better than some of the name brand guys who are elevated based on different factors. But anyway, not that they're not good. Man, this is not a great question for the off season, because I'm not remembering names. I would have to see like a list and be prompted by.
Yeah, let's go.
Like,
you don't have to answer that unless you want to.
Like Sean McDonough and Todd Blackledge come to mind that are really good. Like, again, I'm just not thinking of a million guys out there. Like Dave Pasch, I think's a tremendous play-by-play guy. I think he's phenomenal. One of the very best in the business. He could be in Chris Fowler's, and Chris Fowler's good, but Dave Pasch could do that job tomorrow, but nobody knows who he is because he hasn't built up that brand and that name, and he's just as good. So yeah, again, this is not the time to catch me on this, just because my brain is so far removed from watching the last college football game that we're talking about going back to November when these guys were working.
How about Mike Golick?
I think he's entertaining. Yeah, I like him. He's not one of my favorites, but I think he's fun. He's entertaining. He's got his own deal going. Yeah.
Well, I want to urge everybody to watch your podcast with the Washington State coach. And I'm so interested in coaches because they're teachers. And I think, when we had the Texas A&M coach and, of course, the Alabama comments in his backyard at a fundraising dinner, I think he kind of forgot where he's at and forgot everything he says, including what he orders for lunch goes nationwide. And we like the sensational. But I don't know what coach you admired about being a teacher. And what's interesting is that I have a really good family friend that had a business in Iowa City, and they had a gathering where it's just kind of a showboat thing where you wanted people to like the Iowa football program, and Hayden Fry had a meet and greet on the sidelines, and it was during practice. Kind of a nobody much around. And the guy last in line was my family friend. And he was in the Marines, this family friend of mine. And so he was the last guy in line, and Hayden shook his hand. And of course, practice was going on, and the family friend started walking away, and the guy called him over and he said, "What's your name again?" And he said it, and he says, you got a Marine pin on your shirt. And we mentioned Army, Navy, and what those people do for our country. And he said, how long were you in the Marines? And everybody left. And here he's sitting there talking to Hayden on the sidelines, and assistant coach comes by and says something about practice. And Hayden said, handle it. And so he said, hey, come over here, the barrier, come over here. Let me show you the field. And he walked around during practice talking to this family friend about the Marines. And when he got all done, he went in, got somebody a picture and signed it for this fellow Marine because they had that in common. And so when you do your show, one of the things why I mentioned that story is, and we talking about announcers and play-by-play guys, but one of the things you do better than most, because I've been comparing your show, not a lot, but you stumble onto things, and I compare them to Mark Rogers. Your ability to listen and then process what was said. Now there's some callers I really enjoy, and they're very informative. There's others that are like very fan loyal and loud, and you're patient with them. It doesn't matter what kind of caller you get. Part of your talent is listening and processing. So as far as content, I love those coaching interviews, even if they're assistant coaches, especially parts of the country. What I'm saying is you educate me, and sometimes when somebody's talking to you as a listener, and I'm like, and you know what's said in the chat, and I think I typed this in one night saying, if we don't have any patience for this caller like Mark Rogers does, what are we going to do when we have to have patience if we lived in the Ukraine and we got attacked? So I'll shut up and let you get to bed and comment. But I want to thank you for how you handle yourself. And you probably get embarrassed if I compare you with somebody, but I think what you mentioned about color guys or play-by-play guys is what type of music are they playing with their style. And I can't remember the Los Angeles Dodgers, got to go to bed. Los Angeles Dodgers play-by-play that's the dean of play-by-play, and I can't remember his name, but he's in the market. I don't listen to very much the Dodgers, but my grandfather loved the Dodgers. Say that again?
Vin Scully.
Yeah. Vin Scully was so smooth. My grandfather, who's gone now, he used to listen to all the Cubs games, and I can hear those announcers in my head, and I can hear Vin Scully in those Dodgers games, and that was music you could listen to for a long time. So I'll be quiet and let you comment and let you finish up.
Well, I appreciate the phone call. Thank you so much for finishing up our night in a classy way. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye. All right. So kind words on my ability to process, but I'd say after about 2 hours, my ability nor my desire to process wears down considerably. So I probably don't give the later you wait to call, the less of me you probably get in regards to. I will let you talk and get your opinion out there, but the less response that I have. But Vin Scully was brought up. So Vin Scully, oh my word, Vin Scully. Yeah, Vin Scully might be the greatest announcer in any sport, anywhere. Whew. Yes. It's funny because what my son used to like about Gus Johnson is what he did not like about Vin Scully. He would make fun of Vin Scully when he would hear Vin Scully, because I was a huge baseball fan until a couple of years ago. My favorite sport, would have it on all the time. I could watch any team, any game, anything, knew everything, all that, all the time. I've said that before, knew every stat imaginable. And Vin Scully, oh my word, yes, Gary, the standard. That guy was so flawless. I don't know that I've ever heard Vin Scully misspeak in listening to him for 45 years. So smooth, so well measured. Oh, just phenomenal. Vin Scully, my goodness, yes. You're talking otherworldly. There are a few that can be compared to him. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. As we see the numbers die, that's when I should probably call this, it's probably a 2-hour show. Regardless of how many phone calls we get, I think we can tell from the number of people online when we're sitting there at 140, 150, and then it starts to taper off. Yep. Time to say goodbye. But I appreciate everybody being here. And we will churn out the content. I've got a number of ideas, and we will get them out there. All right, here at the Voice of College Football. See you on Sunday.